Hello, and welcome to The Fool and the Philosopher.
The Philosopher and the Fool.
I don't know if you've played Heroes of War recently, but they've massively overhauled and improved the game. It's really good now. Everyone is super unique. Like, each race is... Like, I was playing as the fish people, like the mermaid faction, and they have pearls they can hunt for.
The axolotl men?
No, they're I don't. Well, I guess. Yeah, I guess they're kind of axolotl men. But they have pearls they can hunt for, and it's basically like a relic quest every turn, and you can, and so you'll see like a little pearl just going off into the distance, and it's like northeast. There's a pearl, so you can go and dig up some resources. Then I was playing as the dungeon faction, and their heroes can summon clones of themselves, which are identical, and when they die, they spawn again. And so you can just have another hero out on the map with all the same stats and all the same units going around fighting, collecting, and whenever they gain experience, they give it to the main hero.
Has he made any scenarios, or is it just random maps still?
It's just random maps, but the latest update, he massively improved the random map generator. Okay. So it's a lot more like Heroes 3's random map generator, rather than the sort of little blobs that were stitched together. Now it feels a lot more natural.
Yeah, I think scenarios are one of the big parts of Heroes. Here's My Magic, actually in my mind, is kind of a single-player game. And you play the scenarios, and scenarios have their own little stories.
I like the random maps, personally. And I think they let it last forever, right? Because eventually you play all the scenarios.
Yeah, they definitely do that. But for someone like me who plays it once they have Blue Moon.
Yeah. But I've always, even before that, I basically always defaulted to playing the random maps. My problem with scenarios is that they don't necessarily... It depends on the scenario, but if the scenario, for instance, doesn't put any gems in your starting zone, you are restricted to a kind of play, right?
Yeah.
You don't get to choose, okay, this time I'm going to really go for behemoths, and you have to adapt to the map, which is neat.
Yeah.
And you have to adapt to the map on a random map as well. But I think in the scenario, you have to adapt more to what the author of the map wanted you to do.
Yeah, well...
And if they mess up the map, then... I think you saw at least the start of my video, right? Where if they mess up the map, you lose on week 4 for no fault of your own.
There's a Heroes 2 scenario where you have to start as a warlock, and the major problem of the game, as the whole story of the game, is there's no sulfur anywhere, and you're the warlocks in Heroes 2. And there's events that happen like once in a week or once in a month where if you have sulfur, you lose 10 sulfur, and so if you get sulfur, you have to spend it.
And I actually think Heroes 2 is better suited to scenarios than Heroes 3. Yeah, I think so. Because there's so much more asymmetry in Heroes 2 that you do play a lot more of... Like I saw Norovo recently finished a map where there's a bunch of different factions on this massive map that fight each other.
Yeah.
And the humans start in a zone with tons of castles. The warlocks start in a zone where there's one warlock castle and a bunch of barbarian castles.
Yeah.
So the warlocks can only ever get one castle's worth of warlock production going. Yeah. And then they can supplement with barbarian units. But it's balanced around, which is a really cool way to do it. And then the undead have 3 castles, and the wizards have 3 castles. And so it's a really neat way to do the balance.
Was this Heroes 2?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know Norvo did too.
Yeah, that was his favorite game in the series.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he's got good taste.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that is interesting for number 2 then. I was thinking about that in number 3. I was like, what? But number 2, that makes a ton of sense because, I've only got one warlock castle. Well, here's a few dragons.
The idea of the map was that it was meant to make knights viable, basically. Yeah. A late game. Make knights viable late game. And I don't think it succeeded because what Norovo ended up doing was, taking out the wizard player and then having titans.
Yeah, taking the wizard.
And then he would go to all the dragon utopias and just hire red dragons and then go to the one other warlock castle on the map that was a neutral warlock castle and upgrade them to black dragons. And so
instead of trying to have a stack of 30 crusaders,
which gets killed by a single black dragon or something. But the stats really show in Heroes 2. In his final battle, he had 10 black dragons against his opponent who had 30, but he had 20 more in each stat than his opponent.
Yeah.
And his opponent's dragons couldn't hurt. It's 30 dragons took out 1 titan, and then 15 titans took out half the dragons.
So if you're playing humans, do you basically have to win the game before the warlock gets black dragons?
Not instantly before, but it certainly helps because you get...
Or if you're playing humans, do you have to take a warlock town?
The thing about... Yeah, that's the thing about Heroes of Might and Magic is that the balance... it's odd because you can just take your opponent's town and then you have those units, right? So
It'd be an interesting mod. I don't know how you do it, but basically, if you take a town, the town gets converted to your hero type.
now I forget. It's been a while since I've played Heroes 2. I forget what Warlock heroes start with.
They're really good spellcasters.
Yeah, but do they start like every faction starts with, for example, humans start with leadership, sorcerers start with navigation, undead start with necromancy,
Barbarians start with
pathfinding,
so they have the best hero.
wizards start with wisdom.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what warlocks start with. Might be mysticism.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But no, it's really neat in Heroes 2 actually, because you're like, okay, I need to boat across this ocean with a scout hero. Okay, let's see if there's any sorcerers available. Then you buy a sorcerer. I think that's, or okay, I got to get across this desert. Let's buy a barbarian.
Yeah.
Or okay,
Or let's throw some nomads into my stack to get across the desert.
that's in Heroes 3.
That's Heroes 3, not Heroes 2?
Yeah.
I thought they had that in Heroes 2.
No, they don't have the Soundwalker ability.
Okay, there are some hidden stats, but I guess that's not one of them.
I don't think that. Well, all of them are hidden, I guess, in Heroes 2 because it doesn't show any. Yeah, like dwarves are resistant to magic, and ghosts take on more ghosts, and like every ability is hidden in number 2. Yeah.
Crusaders deal double damage to undead.
Dragons blind when they hit 2 stacks at once.
No, they don't.
They do in free heroes occasionally. I'm 99% sure it's a bug, but that they do. There might be a magic artifact I've never seen that the AI has gotten, but I'm pretty sure it's a bug.
Cyclops can paralyze.
Yeah.
Which is that little red bottle.
And then there's things that have no retaliation.
Yeah.
Like rogues and fairies.
And wolves. No, they just
Wolves
have
double attack.
Double attack. It's like the Crusader.
Yeah, Crusader has double attack. And the Paladin has double attack too.
Crusaders
do double damage against undead.
Crusaders have an insane damage output, actually. And they're quite fast.
Yeah. And they have if you give them Dragon Slayer, they can do alright against like red dragons and whatnot.
If you cast haste on them, like one of the problems is their initiative. Like if a Crusader could cross the map in a single turn and out initiative dragons, they would stand a chance.
Yeah. But the problem is, if you have them fully covered in good spells, they can take on black dragons, right? But it takes like 3 turns to do that.
Yeah.
And you're a worse spellcaster than your opponent, so
yeah,
it's not really going to happen. But black dragons, like, they're so strong on so many levels because not only are they the strongest units in the game just in raw stats, they're also immune to magic, which is absurdly huge. Like, you can lose a fight against 3 black dragons if you have 20 phoenixes because of spellcasting.
The only time when that becomes an apparent disadvantage is if you're fighting an opponent with very powerful spellcasting and they have Resurrect or Necromancer Reanimate Dead.
Yeah.
And you kill a stack and then suddenly that stack's standing again.
Well, yeah, you can't resurrect the black dragons, but they don't die, so it doesn't actually matter that much. And they're super fast, and they're flying, so they can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. Because flying units can go anywhere on the map, so and they're the fastest units in the game besides phoenixes, so and champions. So
yeah, and that asymmetry, you only feel that asymmetry with Azure Dragons in number 3.
Yeah, like the boss dragons in number 3.
I won't even say any of the other dragons, just the Azure.
Fairy dragons are pretty...
Like, Rust Dragons and Crystal Diamonds are really strong, and Fairy Dragons can get off a pretty powerful hit. But Azure Dragons have 1,000 health.
Yeah, they're on a different level. But I don't think black dragons are actually that... Like, so the other unit with 200 health in... 250 health, I think it is. 300? 300.
300.
Yeah, the other unit with 300 health is the Titan.
Yeah.
And so you have 2 units that are that strong. And the Titan costs more.
And does it?
Yeah. Yeah, the Titans... black dragons are 4,000 gold and 2 sulfur, and Titans are 5,000 gold and 2 gems.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or maybe even 3 gems. No, Titans are the most expensive unit in the game, which is...
Cheaper building, though.
No.
Overall, with the 3 upgrades.
No, the 3 upgrades only cost 10 sulfur each, whereas the Cloud Castles cost 20 each.
Really?
Yeah.
The Black Dragon's better.
Yeah, it's cheaper and it's better. Yep. It isn't ranged, which has occasional uses.
And you can cast spells on it.
Yeah, which also has some occasional uses.
Especially when it's the wizard with the library and then they have access to certain spells.
Yeah, but I'd take the Black Dragon, like, basically every time if I had a choice. I was actually trying to think if you could have a map where you could choose... I wasn't sure how to phrase it. Let's say you start with a fully built Warlock town, or you can start with X number of fully built Knight towns. How many Knight towns would it take before you switched over to Knights? Like...
Well, if there was items like the Armor of the Damned or the Saint's clothing, where in Heroes 2, when you start the battlefield, if it casts multiple spells onto your team, that would make things slightly more viable versus the Black Dragon.
Yeah, I don't think there is any. I'm
No.
trying to... Because there's only one combination artifact, and it doesn't cast any spells.
Yeah, no, all the items just increase your stats a lot.
Well, no, the items don't only increase your stats. Like, there's the hot rocks, which increase your fire magic damage. There's the lightning helm, which makes you resist lightning damage. There's the ice cloak, which makes your ice spells do more.
I basically never get items. Like, items feel really rare.
There's the hypnosis, which doubles the power of your... The pendant of hypnosis, which doubles the power of your hypnosis spells. There's...
Like, one hypnosis spell.
No, hypnosis is different in number 2. It just works.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In number 3, it's based on their hit points, but in number 2, it works. It's basically blind, except you get control of the unit. And then...
Is clone a spell in 2?
Yes. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
And does it drop the units next to each other, making line attacks destroy both?
Yeah.
I was thinking that as one being like cloning Crusaders.
Yeah, no, I don't... Cloning Titans is basically the best clone option, I think.
Yeah.
Because they're fast and they hit really, really hard.
Yes.
And yeah, Crusaders hit hard as well, but it's hard to get them into position to make it work for you.
Yeah.
And also, Crusaders hit hard over the course of 2 hits, so they have to take the retaliation, and clones can't really do that.
Yeah.
And Crusaders, they have really high defense, but they don't have much hit points. So they have like 70 hit points, I think. And you look at, so do like Hydras, so it gets a bit silly.
Although one of the things is if you manage to keep them alive, your archer stack is actually some of the best archers in the game for humans.
No, I don't think so. Like, they're okay, but they melt. Like I had...
That's what I'm saying, if you have a large amount of them.
No, but I had like 200, and I fought like 5 Phoenixes, and they just... like, they do not last long. And their damage, if you compare them to like a Grand Elf or a druid, a greater druid, like or a Archmagi, they do not stand up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not at all. Like, I think you probably want like 50% more than Grand Elves in order for it to really to take over for them. Like, they're solid early game, but I really don't think they stick on very well. They're better than orcs. Kind of. Orcs are really tanky, but...
So humans and they're slow. Orcs are slow, and the upgrade archers are fast.
Yeah. Humans have swordsmen, and they have crusaders, which are both... And they have champions. Champions are really fast, which is nice for scouting, but...
So, number 2, the human game plan is get as many resources as quickly as possible, then take over a bear castle.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. And, if you go into diplomacy with humans, it can be quite good because they have leadership. So it means that you can have more disparate armies.
Yeah.
And also their scouting is the best in the game, in my opinion, because of their horses. Because they can have the ultra fast units.
Yeah.
Or maybe second best. I think warlocks, I would say, are better because of gargoyles. Gargoyles are slightly slower,
but you get them way faster.
They're way cheaper, and they can fly.
Yeah.
And I think so. Warlocks, right? If you got rid of the black dragons from the warlocks, I would say the warlocks are still the best army in the game by far because they have gargoyles. You get rid of the gargoyles.
Even better than necromancers?
Oh yeah, you get rid of the gargoyles, and I'd say the warlocks are still the best army in the game by far because they still have their amazing spellcasting
and red dragons,
and they have their red dragons, and they have their hydras, and they have their minotaurs and
centaurs.
Centaurs, no, centaurs I don't really like that much, but everything else in that army is amazing. The griffins are pretty good too. But then so you get rid of all of their good units. You swap them out with army whose units I don't really like that much, like the humans, I guess. I'm trying to think of like the worst. All the factions have something going for them. Maybe the barbarians are the worst. I'm trying to think of like the worst set of units.
No, you give them undead, but they don't get the moral for it.
Yeah, but vampires are amazing. Vampire lords are amazing units.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, but let's say you just get rid of those units, right?
Yeah.
I think warlocks are still the best army in the game because they have the dungeon, which gives them 1,000 gold per turn.
Yeah.
Like the warlocks are so good on so many levels. It's ridiculous. And yeah, their units are cheaper and they're stronger. And they don't really have a downside. Like, the only thing you could do, like, what is the best tier 1 unit in the game? Well, skeletons, but the best tier 1 unit that makes sense, like sprites maybe.
Sprites, halflings are slow.
Halflings can do halflings, if you cast, so halflings do 1 to 4 damage, I think. Like, if you cast bless on them, they do a huge amount of damage.
Yeah, but they are unfortunately slow.
Yeah. They're slow, and also they have like no HP.
And unit speed is so important in number 2. Like,
yeah,
number 3 is kind of important,
but there's no range penalties in number 2, and flying units can cross the field in one turn.
Yeah.
So speed is super important. Yeah. But, well, if you gave them halflings instead of centaurs, then what they could do is just go first because they have gargoyles, and then they cast haste on their halflings. You actually, yeah, because gargoyles, I think, not quite, but if I could, like, you give me any other faction in the game, right?
Yeah.
Like, you say, okay, the humans. And I say, yeah, I'd swap out any of their units for gargoyles. Like, I'd rather have gargoyles than crusaders in the cathedral. Like, gargoyles are so good. Well, if I could get them for the same price and everything.
Yeah.
The only units I think I wouldn't swap out gargoyles for are, like, black dragons.
Vampire lords.
Probably not vampire lords, but the cheapness of...
Power lich.
I'd easily swap out for those. No.
You don't want the...
No, the units I wouldn't swap out for are, like, dragons...
Pixies.
No, I'd easily swap out for pixies. Pixies have average speed. No, here's my list. I'll say no. Dragons, titans, and vampire lords. And that's probably about it. Maybe phoenixes. Phoenixes I like as well. So, would I rather have champions or gargoyles? I think I'd rather have gargoyles in my...
I think champions are faster.
They are. But they're much more expensive. And they can't fly.
Yeah.
And flying is so... Because what you can do with a gargoyle... If you're fighting an opponent who has an impossibly strong army, right? They've got black dragons. They've got, like... I've done this many times. So they've got 30 black dragons. They've got 120 hydras. They've got, like, 80 minotaurs. And you've got nothing, right?
Yeah.
You go to your town. You hire Rathmont or Croto or whoever you want. You give them 5. You give them 5 gargoyles.
Yeah.
So you've spent like 3,000 gold, right? You attack them. You go first because it's in a case of a tie, the attacker goes first. You send your gargoyle across the entire map to attack the black dragons. The black dragon kills whatever stack it's next to because of double attack. You retreat, rinse and repeat. You can kill all their army except for their black dragons with like 10 gargoyles. Because the army keeps getting squished down every time you fight too. So it's like... And there's not really another unit you can do that with because phoenixes cost too much, and champions are too they can't fly, so they're too slow.
Yeah,
and they're also too expensive. And I don't think there's any other very fast flyers.
What if the AI sets its stance too farther apart?
You can still do stuff. You can because they have to come in and kill your dragons, right?
Yeah.
So you just bait them. You can stand in a place that only the black dragon and one other unit can reach, and then they attack you, and then you have 5. So I've done this as well. You can bait them into lines, and then
would this situation of your love of them change if you're playing as a human player?
Not really, because you can still do that initial attack where you take out the stack that's next to the black dragons. Now, if the human was careful and they moved them over, but that would force the human to have 4 stacks instead of 5 against you, right, at all times, basically.
Yeah.
So even then, no, and then if you put them on a hero and that's all they have, they're amazing at scouting. And also, if you're a good spellcaster, you only need 5 gargoyles to win basically any fight because you can avoid any other foe. Just by hopping around the map while you summon earth elementals or you shoot lightning or whatever it might be, and you can block flyers instantly.
Yeah, and then they happen to have champions. They attack you first, and then they cast...
No, the champions won't make it across the field.
No, but they cast chain lightning on your gargoyles.
Oh, if you're fighting another human, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're not going to attack a human with champions if you have 5 gargoyles. Like, you want to go first. That's the whole point.
Yeah, but I'm saying they attack you. There's situations where this doesn't work, but I get your application.
Well, no, because then even if they attack you, right, you've lost 5 gargoyles.
And your hero.
Yeah. Well, if they're chain lightning you, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then you're like, okay, this guy's got chain lightning. I'll send out 4 gargoyles. And now if he chain lightnings me, he's going to hit his own army.
And then he has...
He's got dwarves.
Yeah.
But then he doesn't go first.
No, he does. He's got dwarves and champions.
Dwarves and champions. And he gets bad morale. And then you get him. When?
He's a human.
He's a human. Yeah.
He doesn't have bad morale.
But that's the really cool thing about Heroes 2 is you can theory craft, right? You can be like, oh, what if you had this? What if you had that? Whereas Heroes 3, you can substitute. You can say, okay, so here's a really good strat. You want to have wolves or you want to have boars, right? Like you can swap them in and out. And it's more about the stats. Like you need a 7-stat unit to do this. But in Heroes 2, there's few enough units and all the units are wildly varied enough. It isn't really stat swapping, right? It's actually, okay, you want golems. No, for this definitely you want hydras. No, for this you want... I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
The theory crafting isn't about stats, it's about the units themselves. Like, oh yeah, for this you definitely want... Would I rather have genies or gargoyles? I'd rather have genies. Okay, so genies are another one I wouldn't swap out.
Aren't genies really fast as well?
Yeah, they're very fast. And they're flying. And they can have a stack. So what you do is you fly, you hit the black dragon, they lose half their black dragons, and then the black dragon kills the stack next to it. The problem with genies, though, is that they're the only unit in the game
That's completely limited.
that is completely limited in how many you can get. Yeah, even ghosts have a place called the Barrow, which you can hire them from.
I've never seen that.
No, it's only in the expansion, and it's only on a couple maps because...
Hiring ghosts would be bad.
Well, they didn't realize it at the time, but people very quickly realized after the expansion came out that hiring ghosts is unbelievably broken.
It's like, there is one unit that I would happily take against ghosts. There's two.
Black dragons.
Black dragons and champions. And it's because champions are faster.
The champions don't have much HP.
No, but
I'd rather have titans.
you can cast haste on your champions, and if the ghosts aren't in many stacks, the champion will cross the map in a turn with haste, and they will obliterate ghosts.
Yeah, if you had a bunch of... Like, if there's, 5 stacks of ghosts, though.
Yeah, then that's a problem.
Yeah, I'd rather have titans.
But even then, even if there's 5 stacks of ghosts, even with the low amount, champions have good defense, ghosts don't deal much damage, and the champion will retaliate every single time.
Ghosts have 20 HP, though. They're actually really tough units. Like, they're weirdly strong
Yeah.
for their... Like, you think they'd be a tier 1 like a skeleton, but they're actually more like a tier 3.
Yeah.
Or 4, even. Like, they're actually really strong for some
Or a
reason.
Hydra. I like Hydras against ghosts.
Hydras are decent, yeah, because they have high HP and high health, and they do a lot of damage, and they don't get retaliated against, which is huge against ghosts.
And they have the area attack.
Yeah. Hydras have a lot going for them against ghosts. I think... Yeah, no, I don't think a champion would be my... Like, it would work if you had to fight some ghosts, but I'd rather get a titan, because titans are faster and ranged, so they take out a stack before the fight starts.
Yeah.
And then they can take a hit, and they can also... If they get hit, they can retaliate decently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think titans might actually be... That might be one situation where titans are better than dragons, because you can also resurrect the titans.
Is there any terrain where magic doesn't work in 2?
I don't think so.
No.
No. I'm pretty sure there's not. I don't think they have special terrain in number 2.
Besides just movement effects?
Yeah, besides movement effects. And I don't know if there's even stat bonuses. I don't think there's stat bonuses for terrain either in number 2.
You don't have native soil?
No, I don't think so. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think so.
If humans fight in snowy terrain, because for some reason that's their native soil, number 2.
Yeah.
If humans fight in snowy terrain, all their stats are multiplied by 2. And they're still not that good.
Well, I think, like...
Actually, no, that they would be good with multiply of 2 of all their stats.
I think the easiest buff for humans to make number 2 work would be to give them a second well. It would be fitting, and it would be fitting, and it would be fitting.
No. If you have peasants in your army, each peasant produces a gold per week.
Or even if they're in your town.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, actually, I think, well, a gold per week, a gold per day. I think it'd have to be per day. Because a peasant costs like 10 gold already. So, like, if it was per week, they'd never pay for themselves. And I think...
Even then, you don't get units.
I think, like, if a peasant gave a gold per day and they cost 10 gold, it pays off in a week.
Yeah.
And then you're only going to have, 400 peasants, let's say, mid-game.
Yeah.
And so you're making, 400 gold extra per day. I think that would be... You could make them give you more than 1 gold per day. I think you could make them give you, 5. I think you can make them give you 5. Because, that's a lot. That'd be better than the dungeon.
5 a day?
Yeah, each peasant. That'd be better than the dungeon, right? But you have to buy peasants. Yeah. So you have that stain on you.
Yeah, your castle is occupied by peasants as well.
So there's a space in your castle that's taken up by peasants. You have to build a hovel.
You buy an extra hero just to shove peasants into it, and he hides in shame in a corner of your land.
You have to build a farm, probably. So I think...
Just replace the farm. It doesn't give you extra peasants. It just gives you the well bonus.
I think it would actually be more balanced than the treasury in number 3. Right, because you get 50 peasants a week or something?
Yeah.
So you're getting 200, if I do 5, you're getting 250 gold a day extra.
Yeah.
Which is per week. So every week you get another 250 gold per day.
Yeah.
Whereas every week you're getting 2,000 extra gold per every, I mean, that gets very strong.
Yeah.
But the treasury, you get the first round, the first week you have the treasury, that's an extra 1,000 gold, and then you can get extra 10,000 gold per week with the treasury if it really gets around to.
Each additional treasury is
another 10%.
Yeah, and it's not a stacking 10%, it's literally a 20%.
And you can't kill the treasury like you can kill the peasants.
Yeah.
You go and you attack their town.
That'd actually be interesting, you attack the town or you hunt the peasant hero who's trying to hide.
You just, either they have a hero hiding with peasants, or you go to the town, and you kill all the peasants, and then you leave, and they get their town back, but they don't have the peasants anymore. I think that would actually be balanced. It could get out of hand on certain maps, like if they have a really good defensive position.
Or if there's multiple human castles, like that map with them.
It would probably be better to be like 2.5 gold per turn or something. 2 gold per turn. But 5 is a nice round number. But yeah, 2 is probably a lot more reasonable. And to keep in line with a peasant 1 for everything, 1 would make more sense, right?
Yeah.
Like 1 gold per turn. But I don't think... I guess it'd be worth buying the peasant.
Yeah.
And you could make it only when they're in their town or something. Yeah. And then you could say farm stuff, or you could say if they're in town, they double it to 2, or they or the farm doubles it, something like that.
Yeah.
That'd be another way to balance it. But even if you had unlimited gold as the humans, you have
to deal with human units.
You still need to buy something with it, right? And they don't have the production. So I think the double well as well would work quite well. Like you get it super well for humans. I think
instead of the extra 4 or 5. No, you also get the extra 4 or 5 castles. There's a spare slot that's not used up. It's all jiggy.
Yeah. I think you could give every faction another thing, and I think
the Necromancer 2 things.
The Necromancer's got one in the path of the price of loyalty.
Oh, do they did?
Yeah, they got an extra building. They got the Necromantic Amplifier, I believe.
Okay.
Which gives them +5 or +10% necromancy.
Are skeletons good because of necromancy, or are they good because of their stats?
Because of necromancy.
Okay.
Like, they're an okay unit, but it's
because I thought that the goblins had the best stats.
The goblins have the highest attack, maybe?
Yeah.
But
then the halflings have the best damage.
The highest max damage, yeah. I think the highest damage output is probably skeleton. Like, average damage is probably skeletons?
Well, goblins are 1 to 3 damage.
Yeah. I don't remember what skeletons are. They might be 1 to 3 as well, or 1 to 2. Pixie have no retaliation, which is nice.
Yeah.
But there's no weight, so it's less powerful than in than the number 3.
But you always feel bad when you have a high value unit that gets punched by a stack of 200 pixies.
Yeah.
Well, retaliate.
The other thing about the pixies is I've seen this happen a lot where your opponent has 200 pixies and they go and they start chewing away at your archers or even your like dragons or something. They just start tapping away at them, and you just let them because you're trying to focus on everything else.
Yeah, that's higher value.
Yeah, and so the pixies, they become a growing problem where you get to the point where you realize, wait, I'm not strong enough to deal with these anymore, and they're still not taking retaliation damage.
Yeah.
And so they are kind of interesting in that way, where you have to take them out early, but not too early.
Yeah, if you waste a turn taking out the pixies, that's another turn Grand Elves get to shoot you.
Yeah. So they can, even though there is no waiting, they can, because if they can fly anywhere, they can...
Grand Elves or Archdruids, actually.
Yeah.
The Sorcerers have a nasty lineup.
Yeah, and then they've got the dwarves to defend the...
if you ever get close enough. That was one thing I remember I played against the AI if I was playing against Sorcerers. And I was taking everything out, and you know how you sort of avoid, like, leave something to last that slow, like the dwarves? And they had 300 dwarves. And the battle chewed my army up because it was a big fight. It's like 5 fights. Right, now just time to finish off these dwarves. And they didn't go down.
I was really upset recently with Heroes 3. I'm doing the campaign, right? And I was fighting, and I'm doing Iron Man, so if I lose, it's over, right? And I was fighting this Necromancer army that was ridiculously powerful. Like, it had a stack of 300 skeleton warriors, and then another stack of 300 skeletons, and then, like, 40 liches, like the upper power liches, 3 ghost dragons, which was nothing, 30 vampires, I think a bunch of whites, and then like 40 dread knights. And so, and I had this like force that was like nothing except for 9 ancient behemoths. So I had 9 ancient behemoths, which was pretty strong, but nothing else, right? And I used like force field, and I was doing all these wacky. I took out their entire army except for the stupid dread knights.
Yep.
And my behemoths were faster, so I was just running around hitting them with spells. But my opponent was a better spellcaster than me.
Yep.
And the problem was I kept resurrecting my behemoths, but like he just kept absorbing my, like I couldn't take out the stupid dread knights.
The thing that really hurt me with the dread knights is I actually managed to take out their 56 stack. And this was a campaign. There was a very powerful necromancer. He cast Reanimate Dead, and he got 32 of them back. And I was like, well, at least I can weaken him and take him out later. And then he casts again on the stupid dread knights.
Yeah. Yeah, and in this case, I just lost the entire thing because I was Craig Hack, so...
Yeah.
But, yeah, tanky units, you just leave them alone because you can avoid them. But then at the end,
You can't even avoid Dread
well, because they're
Knights.
so fast. Yeah.
It's you're expert at Earth magic. You cast mass slow, and it's like, all right, what's the AI going to do? They're going to remove the slow from their dragons? No, they're going to remove the slow from their Dread Knights.
Well, that's the worst thing about the campaign. So when you get 2/3 of the way through the campaign, it makes your hero have random stats, random skills. So my Craig Hack, who had expert Earth magic, now is expert navigation instead. So I don't have Earth magic. So I couldn't even slow his army. I was just running.
I didn't know it did that.
Yeah, it's really annoying. You can you can re-roll for like 6 hours and try to get them aligned right.
Yeah.
But then the problem is after you beat that mission, it locks it in. So I'm now locked in with a Craig Hack that has like all these terrible stats and skills. It's really annoying. Yeah, except the weird thing is, if you fight, I haven't gotten this yet, but I was reading about it. If you fight Gem in one of the final missions as Sandro, instead of it being the weird random gem that they ruined for you, you actually fight against your super gem that you had at the start. So
they have the technology,
so they could have
transfer it over.
Yeah, but they didn't transfer the heroes over for some reason. But even if there's a bug you can do where you free gem from a prison while you have gem, and it like overwrites your current gem or something. Like it's a little broken, but I have to restart that whole mission now.
Oh, so it's not Iron Man the whole campaign. It's just mission.
No, I'm not that crazy.
Yeah.
No. Because I'm on Impossible too, and sometimes there's just bad luck,
I think the people who are super dedicated to Iron Man and like really long games that involve Iron Man, you're a different kind of person than I am.
Well, I think even this is like I'm doing it, but it's like I'm considering stopping. I've almost done the entire campaign like this, and I also did all of the Heroes 2 campaigns like this. But like I did Price of Loyalty and the base game. But now I'm like, is this worth it? Why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? I think one of the main things it does is it forces you to actually be cautious and know if you can win a fight or not. Like you don't just go, oh, I can probably win that in attack. You go, okay, no, I need to stay back. I need to hide in my castle. And I didn't do that, right? I should have hid in my castle because the knight can't hop over the walls, right? So I could have done it potentially. But
is Dread Knight the best tier 6? Because they feel absolutely tank.
They're as strong as like a bone dragon, aren't they? Like they've got 100.
I think one of the things that skews it is if you play the campaigns, there's like 3 Dread Knight producing buildings that the AI get access to outside just the castle that they can collect more Dread Knights from.
There's one of the campaign missions you fight a Dread Knight hero. He's underground in a castle and he's got like 200 of them. Yeah. He's ridiculous. It's the one where you play as Craig Hack and you're like running around and you keep that Dread Knight hero you fight at the end. That guy is ridiculous. And
we got Wyvern Monarchs. Those are,
and then you've got
Behemoth Kings.
You mean Cyclops Kings?
Cyclops Kings. Sorry.
Yeah, Cyclops Kings are pretty good.
Yeah.
There is
War Unicorns.
Scorpicores. War Unicorns are really good. I think War Unicorns might be better.
They're pretty tanky.
They're really strong. They can blind and they're magic resistant.
I think they produce slightly less though than the Dread Knight, because that's one of the other things is I think you get like 3 Dread Knights or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
And you only get 2 war.
Yeah, I think they have the same amount of health as the Dread Knights as well.
Champions.
Nega Queens. Champions also have a lot of health.
Yeah. And champions are faster.
And they have a charge bonus. They don't have the chance to do double damage, but they can do morale.
Yeah.
And morale is basically double damage.
Yeah.
Although with champions it's not, because if they go again and want to attack the same unit, they can't
get the full distance.
They can't get the full distance. Yeah, so champions and war unicorns I'd say are probably on the same level. And Nega Queens can be terrifying against the right army.
Yeah.
Like really, really dangerous. I think they do the most damage they do 25 damage per hit.
A Frit? No.
Yeah. Those are amazing as well. Yeah.
That's not. It's Pit Lords are the highest.
No, it's the Frit.
Oh really?
Yeah.
The Frits are higher tier than Genie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thought they'd be parallel.
No, they're higher tier.
Yeah, Fire Shield's very good.
Yeah, and they're super fast.
And you can cast Fire Shield on a Fritz.
And they hit super hard.
Because the Frit Fire Shield's a different Fire Shield than Fire Shield.
They might be immune to fire magic though.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Psychic Elementals,
which are they're okay. They're immune to magic.
They have no retaliation.
Yeah. Well, that's the same as the Nagas.
They are immune to magic. They have okay movement speed. They have pretty good stats.
Yeah, I think mobility is always a big factor for me.
Then there's those stupid shield guys.
Oh, the Nyx. Those are really good as well. Yeah. Would I rather have a Nyx or like a Unicorn or Dread Knight or a Champion? I think Champion I'd put at the worst of all of those.
Wyvern Monarch?
Of the good ones.
Okay.
Yeah. No. I'd put a Champion as the worst of the good ones. Cyclops. Oh, or would I... Yeah, I'd rather have a Cyclops King than a Champion, I think.
It's Scorpion Core.
No, for the Barbarians, I mean.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather have a Cyclops King. Because range units are nice.
Yeah. I would rather have Mighty Gorgons than Wyvern Monarchs.
Yeah, most of the time. Wyvern Monarchs, again, like, I think a Wyvern Monarch is really good against, like...
Their poison, if it's applied, is actually...
Like an Azure Dragon.
Yeah. Their poison is quite good.
Because if you think about it, a single Wyvern Monarch can do over 300 damage to an Azure Dragon.
If you think about it, Mighty Gorgon
can do over 1,000 damage. Yeah, okay.
I think Azure Dragons are immune to Death Gaze.
No, they're not.
No, they aren't?
No.
Yeah.
Gorgons are the only unit which can defeat Azure Dragons.
Yeah, so 10...
in equal numbers.
So you need 11 Mighty Gorgons to guarantee to kill on Azure Dragon.
But, yeah, I'm trying to think... Yeah, when would you want the Wyverns?
They're flying. They can take out...
They're fairly fast. They're kind...
Are they the only fly... No, Scriptor and them. Like, there's not many flying tier 6s.
Yeah.
And they're...
But...
Okay, this is... They're
but
one...
like a thunder... I'd rather have a Thunderbird in a lot of ways.
Well, they're one of the 2 flying units the Swamp gets. However, the Swamp's other flying unit...
It's the best in the game.
Is the most annoying unit in the game.
But it's... Well, like, everything I was saying about Gargoyles for number 2? Dragonflies are that, but better.
Or... Would you rather, like, Harpy Hag versus Dragonfly? The Dragonfly can cross the map, can't it? And Harpy Hag can't?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Dragonfly can cross the map in a single turn.
Yeah.
And Dragonflies...
So, do you get retaliation against the Dragonfly?
Yes.
Okay.
Dragonflies, though, are really good for scouting.
Yeah.
They can dispel magic, so they also can cast weakness. And they are also a swamp-type creature, which means that if you're scouting across swamp terrain, you can fly across it.
I forgot they dispel whatever they hit.
Yeah.
That's the insane part about them.
Yeah. No, they're amazing. And they're really tanky. And they're also cheap, and they're
most
plentiful.
Maps you can get a few extra from their nests.
Yeah. No, they're really good.
Yes. The swamp's got, like, when I think about the swamp, it's Mighty Gorgons and Dragonflies, but I was thinking about them in different ways, because I think of Mighty Gorgons are on my side, and I think of Dragonflies as always on the enemy's side.
Okay, so balancing Heroes 3, right? I think the Fortress is the worst town pretty easily. Like, they're not very good at spellcasting. They have some good heroes. Well, they have like 2 good heroes. 3.
They have 3 really good heroes.
They have Braum, who has all the basilisks.
Yeah.
And then they've got that Knoll dude he starts with armor and offense.
Yeah.
And he specializes in Gorgons.
I thought he specializes in Knolls.
No, he specializes in
Okay.
Gorgons.
Okay.
And then they have Tazar, who specializes in armor.
Yeah. Is Tazar the banned one in...
I don't think they banned any of them.
I thought one of the Swamp Heroes is banned.
I don't think so.
Okay.
They rebalanced Braum,
Okay.
so he was probably the closest to being banned. I think they made him slightly weaker.
Because Braum has a very good start.
Yeah, it's not like Braum's very good except at the very start. So they just...
Braum can secure your resources, which can give you a massive...
Sorry, you're right, Shakti.
Yeah.
They banned Shakti. Because Shakti started with like 120 troglodytes.
You mean Knolls?
No, troglodyte. Oh, Shakti is... Yeah, okay, no, they didn't ban anyone from Fortress then. It's a dungeon hero they banned because they had like 1 billion troglodytes. Yeah. Or they rebalanced them, I can't remember what they did.
I guess I could call the Swamp or Fortress the worst.
Name a worse than them. Like, Fortress... Stronghold has Behemoths, which are really good. They've got...
The...
Cyclops, which are really good. Conflicts is the best.
That's only if they get their wonder, though.
No, they're the best for a lot of reasons.
They also get the most...
They get Phoenixes, yeah. They're the best for a huge amount of reasons, and those reasons are Phoenixes.
And their wonder is very good.
Yeah.
Humans get archangels.
Yeah, which I think is the best unit in the game.
Rampart has the dwarf vault.
Yeah.
Which just makes it.
Yeah, and they have gold dragons, which are really solid. And they have grand elves, which are really good early game.
Yeah, and they have centaur captains.
And dendroids, which are really good at... Yeah, centaur captain's probably the best tier 1. And dendroids, which are really good at defending.
I think every unit that they have besides the Pegasus Riders are good.
I love the Pegasus Riders. They're basically my gargoyles.
Pegasus Riders get obliterated.
You don't get them hit. What you do is you always have 1 in your army. Because then you go first every time, because they're super fast. And all your opponent's spells cost 1 more.
Okay.
So you just make them worse at magic.
Yeah.
And they give magic... no, they don't give magic resistance. Or do they?
That's the unicorn.
They are resistant to magic, I believe.
No, they just disrupt magic. It's the unicorn that has the aura.
Yeah, but they're also like an amazing for a scout hero. You just give them like 3 of them. Scout hero can go everywhere. Yeah. They're super fast. No, they're amazing. They're fragile, but you don't use them... Well, you use them to like take out archers quickly, because you can wait, remember, as well. So you can wait, go across the map in 1 turn, take out some archers.
I think that getting behemoths can actually just out-momentum Braum.
Yeah, behemoths are really good. Thunderbirds are really good. Cyclops Kings are really good, but they're too expensive to really be worth it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You just Thunderbird, Behemoth, you've out-momentum.
Ogre Magi are really good, but again, too expensive to get. And
did the makers of Heroes 4 look at the Barbarian Town and just go, yeah, with the split choice of what to get?
Yeah, because it is basically, you can go the expensive Ogre Cyclops route, or you can go the cheap Thunderbird Behemoth route, which is what they do in number 4 as well, Yeah, I wonder, because it is a neat idea.
Necromancers are the best heroes in the game.
Yeah.
By a long shot.
And that's all of them, I think.
Inferno.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Inferno could be worse. Inferno has demon farming, and they have the best one-on... Well, Demon Gate isn't really worth it. But they have the best one-on-one unit in the game, which is the Archdevil. And they have...
Is the Archdevil best one-on-one? I feel like the Archangel wins.
It might, but against, like... you do a fight against every unit in the game, and...
I feel like also the Hydra beats the Archdevil.
No, Hydra doesn't do any damage to it.
No?
No. Archdevil's faster and can teleport.
Oh, and they don't get retaliation as well.
Yeah.
Right.
No, Hydra can't hurt them. Yeah. And Ifrit, really good. There's demon farming. But they
have familiars.
All the units in the Inferno armor are actually really good. The problem is they don't get very many of them.
Yeah.
So I think they might be worse just because of that. But demon farming, like, there isn't a comeback mechanic that the Fortress has like demon farming. And also Fortress they're limited to spell level 3, I believe, whereas Inferno isn't limited.
Fortress does get Mighty Gorgons.
Inferno heroes kind of suck, though.
Yeah. I mean, the dungeon's good, so we're not going to...
Yeah, okay, so Fortress is probably better than Inferno. I'll give you that. Okay.
So what about the Tide Town?
That Cove is really solid, too. Okay, but here's how I'd boost Fortress, and then you can tell me how to boost Inferno, so we'll make it even.
Okay.
And you haven't thought about it, but I've thought about this a lot, so it'll be fair. So the way to fix Fortress, in my mind, is you give Hydras regenerate.
You think that's enough?
I don't think it's necessarily enough, but I think it makes Hydras not... Okay, I'll say this. Hydras are the worst tier 7.
Yeah.
Like, they're the worst tier 7 easily.
By far.
That makes them, like, awesome in certain circumstances, right? Yeah. Like, you need to defend a town? Get some Hydras. Yeah. And they're not super slow either. Like, they're slow, but they're not super slow. So now you have Hydras in there.
I feel like I would say give Hydras regeneration and give them 400 health.
Like, even more health?
Because they have the same amount of health as the dragon. They actually don't have more health than the other top tiers. I feel like Hydras should have 400 hit points. Like, when it's like, oh, Hydras have 400 hit points, and I look at them and they don't.
I think they have 300 or something, right?
No, they have 250.
I thought they had like 300
they just
or
have
350 or something. I think 400 is too much, but 350 I could argue for. But I don't think they should have more than dragons. Like, it is just a Hydra. It's not like a...
It's Chaos Hydra.
Yeah, but I don't think it should be ridiculous. Because you look at, like, it should have more than a Phoenix, obviously. Yeah. But I don't think it needs to be, like Black Dragons, I actually think, if anything, should be buffed a little, just to be the best unit.
Well, it's Archangel.
Yeah, that's the problem, is, I want Black Dragons to be stronger than Archangels. Maybe they shouldn't be, though. It's kind of weird when... I think the problem is that every faction has, like, a sort of really high-tier creature, instead of it just being the Titans and the Dragons.
Yeah. But it's not always their tier 7 that is the high tier.
But I kind of want archangels to not be part of the human faction, maybe. Like, put them over with the...
And also get rid of griffins from the human faction.
Well, it's more like, I think... You know how some factions cap out on how high of spell power they can get?
Yeah.
I think they should also cap out on how strong they can get. Like, I think that not everyone should have a transcendent, all-powerful creature, right? Like a dragon or a titan or like a phoenix. I think is in a good place. It's not super strong, but it's mystical and powerful. But I think the angel it's really strong.
What would the humans have besides the archangel for their tier 7?
They could just have no tier 7. They could just have 6.
They would be terrible.
Well, you could do other stuff to give them, like, to compensate. Like
Would they have 2 tier 6s? Because you need to fill every creature slot.
No, you don't. They specialize in leadership. They could like, you could give them a gate of summoning as well.
You cannot. No, it needs to fill everything. You need to be able to buy and fill everything.
No, you don't. Like,
yes, you do.
They could just have an empty slot, or they could have like a market. They could have like a mercenary guild.
No, you
a refugee camp.
You have to have 7 units for each faction.
What if they had a mercenary, like a refugee camp? Where they could just get anything?
You're making the game lesser by not having the interesting creativity of a unique unit.
No, the interesting creativity of the humans would be that their leadership allows them to take like an extra unit.
That's like saying my special power is I can copy other people's power. That's a lame power.
It's a cool power.
No, it's such a lame power.
It's creative. Okay, fine. Then What if they get like double production? Their tier 7 building is just everything again.
They need to have a unit to fill that slot.
Okay, what if it's... Okay. It is actually a unit, though. It's like everything's standing on one tile.
The army?
It's like you've got like a crusader riding a griffin,
and
wearing monk robes.
With the champion's lance?
With the champion's lance. No, the griffin's riding a horse.
No, the griffin's carrying off a horse.
Yeah, and the horse is wielding a halberd.
And there's a crossbow?
There's a crossbow. The image is ringed with crossbows and menaces with spikes of obsidian and abalone. Okay. Well, tier 7 would be a paladin.
Okay. What's this lower upgrade?
Crusader. It has 3 tiers. Whoa.
So what you have to?
Your tier 4 upgrades into a tier 7 when you build the right.
No,
building.
that's still one less unit. You need to have a unit and its upgrade.
Okay, then it upgrades into a crusader. Swordsman, crusader.
No, it upgrades into a paladin, right? Yeah. And paladin has fancy art. And when it upgrades into a crusader, it's the 2D sprite.
Yeah.
And its stats are the same as the 2D.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that thing would be so bad.
Or could they have like 2 tier 4s and like would that work for you? Or tier 2 tier 2 tier 2 tier 2s. 2 tier 2s, right? So marksman, bring marksman back.
They would be so, and then also their final building doubles production or so. They would get tier 7 is so important in Heroes 3.
Yeah, but I don't like. I think it should be more like Heroes 2, where it isn't.
Games also last longer. You can't win as fast. Humans get rolled over every game, especially if you only had one city per one town per.
I also think their mage guild should be lowered down 1 tier, down to 3 instead of 4. Okay, so now we balance humans, we balance fortress. Now you have to balance inferno.
All right, to balance inferno,
you take away the devil and reduce their spellcast.
No, their devil's like their main thing.
Yeah.
I would make it so they get 1 extra devil a week.
I don't think that's enough. Like, because there's the mid game and the early game, and
1 extra devil a week, and then you have the final castle, so that gives you 2. I'm saying like 1 out of base.
Right, but but there's still mid game and early game to consider, right? Like, you want them to be viable all the way along.
Yeah, but that's the same thing as Phoenix is. 4 devils a week is a lot.
Yeah, but what about the rest of the game that isn't end game?
Okay, we'll get rid of the devils. So rest of the game. Okay, imps steal 1 more mana.
They steal all the mana.
No. Imps are already not fun enough to play against. Each imp...
Those familiars do it.
Sorry, I make it a formula. So instead of familiars stealing 1 mana, it's like some sort of Fibonacci sequence based on the amount you have. This increasingly steals mana and gives it to the enemy hero.
That's not actually a bad idea, because that way you're not encouraged to have like a bunch of... I don't know. Then it becomes a bit fiddly.
Well, I'd have like a max point. Like they would only ever steal 10.
Yeah, but what I mean by fiddly is right now it's very simple. I want to steal more mana. I will have 7 in my army, right? But this way, it's like, okay, I'll have 10 in the stack, and then I'll have, like, you always have to count. Okay, make sure you have 11.3.
Well, that's kind of how you play with genies in your army.
Yeah.
You want to have a bunch of individual genies.
No, I think having a bunch of individual is cool, which is how it currently works.
Yeah.
But because it doesn't matter how many are in a single stack.
Right.
But this way, you encourage them to put them all in one stack.
Okay.
Which might be better in a way, because then it's less faffing about having them spread out. But that way, you can't say, okay, do I want to steal 1 more mana per turn, or do I want to have Severai, right?
Demon farming's also late game.
It's kind of like mid-game even. But
I mean, they don't have to have an early game.
here's how I would balance Inferno, right? I think this is the way to do it. Castle Gate, that structure they built,
Yeah.
maybe halve its price, make it 5,000, and then it can teleport you to any castle you own. They don't have to have a gate constructed.
Yeah. That'd be quite good.
I think that would balance them.
Yeah, of course,
pretty
it's
nicely.
not another demon place. You can't teleport back.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that would balance them quite nicely.
Yeah, I would also give them an evil stable. And when you visit it, everyone gets on the whole map gets less movement.
Or what about like an anti-mana vortex where it halves the spell power of
People who attack.
all non-visiting heroes?
Ooh.
You just go there. You know in Mario Kart when someone uses the lightning item, it's just like...
I would change their stupid grail. So it's not always weak of the imp.
Yeah, it's now weak of the familiar.
No. God, I hate that so much.
What would you make it then?
So they add base...
Heroes can town portal from anywhere.
Well, it's still a giant Satan. So at a base, the Grail gives you money and what else? Population?
Yep.
And then it has a special effect.
Yeah.
And because it's a giant Satan, I might just give them more money.
Yeah. But they don't have anything to spend it on.
Well, your Grail doubles your production.
Right, but the Grail already makes up for it, I think, so...
5,000
5,000 a week? It might not make up for it, I guess. Yeah.
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 Also, you can have more towns than just your Grail town.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, more money. Money's always good.
Yeah.
Okay, rebalancing magic. So,
Oh, I want to think about the other Grails quickly. What's the human one do?
the human one gives everyone +3 morale.
Is that only if they're defending the town?
No, just everyone.
Okay.
It's useless. Humans all have leadership.
Yeah. I'd make it so it removes the cat from leadership.
Ooh, I like it. Yeah.
And it does that plus.
Aham does that.
Yeah.
It makes leadership go up to 5. Yeah.
Just removes the cap though, so it's +3 plus 3 they already have. And instead of how leadership makes it so you can like go twice.
Yeah.
Like if you have 6 leadership, it does another roll after you got, so you have 3 turns in a row.
You know what Hero's Hour does for negative luck? So if you have positive luck, there's a chance you get a critical hit every time you attack. If you have negative luck, there's a chance you're struck by lightning every time you attack.
Yeah.
So the Rampart, it's even worse. They just give you +3 luck everywhere.
Yeah, again, I take the cap off luck.
Yeah. Then you've got...
Wizards give you map vision.
Yeah, which depends on the circumstance, how good that is.
Yeah.
You've got Dungeon.
I think the Wizards map, if there's Necromancers on the map, it's nice because their totalizing map vision overwhelms the stupid smokestacks.
I don't think the Grail beats those.
Okay, then I would make it so it beats them.
Right. So you can see them anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dungeon makes you insane spellcaster, doesn't it? It gives you like +10.
When you're defending. +10 power when you're defending.
Only when defending?
Yeah.
It just drops +10 power.
Yeah. The
Barbarians makes so you can run away and
no, +10 attack when defending. Or +20 maybe. I think it's +...
Yeah, I get rid of the defending bonus. It just drops on your hero.
Fortress gives you +10 attack and defense when defending.
Yeah, so yeah, just drop it on all the heroes.
Fortress suddenly becomes the best Grail.
Yeah.
Just like...
And Necromancer gives you more Necromancy?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like +15% or something.
Yes, bump that up to 30.
And Forge is really cool. It makes you cast Lightning Bolt on every stack you attack at the start of combat.
Oh. And what's the Cove?
Aurora Borealis, which makes all terrain native terrain.
Ah. Yeah, no, I think I've fixed all the
So you
grails.
can move quickly and you can... you also get bonus attack and defense on all of them.
And when I say fix all the grails, it's made them interesting rather than, ooh, I get a bonus one in my face.
Yeah. So...
Would +10 be better than...
Yeah, that's so good.
What does Fortress is +20 defense?
+10, I think.
As well? as the ramp? So the barbarians get +10/+10?
No, they get plus 20 attack, I think.
Okay.
Or something. Or plus 10 attack. It's something like that.
Yeah, that'd be a way to balance the fortress.
They just get plus 10.
You have to get your grail.
Yeah, and then you...
No, actually, no. The fortress, once you've built every building in the fortress, you get +10 to all your heroes. And if you get the grail, it gives another +10.
So you're doing basically 50% more damage, and you're taking like 25% less damage just everywhere once you have the grail.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be very strong. Okay, so fixing magic, right? First of all, Dimension Door. Fire magic spell, obviously. Right, because fire magic, worst school of magic. Just take Dimension Door from air magic, give it to fire magic, because the fire people gate all the time, right? It makes perfect sense.
Also, like the teleportation animation in number 4 is a fiery gate.
Yeah. Also, town portal. Fire magic, obviously.
Huh?
There's a castle gate that's in the thing, right?
Yeah.
Fire magic. Okay. Or you could potentially make Dimension Door water magic, I guess. But I'm going to put them both on fire magic because here's my new rule for Dimension Door. Dimension Door does not work across bodies of water. So you can't Dimension Door over water. So now water walking is better.
Or fly.
Or fly. Yeah. Oh, air magic. Okay, you can't fly over mountains. It's too cold.
No, you can.
No, it's too cold.
No, you can. There are maps where you're only able to get certain items because you have to have fly.
It's too cold.
It's literally the design is you get fly, you get the Archangel wings, and then you can get the other items.
Okay, what you do in that case, right? I'm going to buff remove obstacle. It can get rid of mountains.
So are you saying you're just making this Age of Wonders?
Well, Age of Wonders is a better game, so... Alright, fire magic now has the forest fire, which allows you to burn down forest. Like in Age of Wonders. And,
I was really excited when they're like, oh, the Archwizards are coming back from number 4.
Yeah.
And they're super powerful, and they're like the same power levels as the wizards from number 1.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're powerful, but they're not as powerful as the wizards from number 1.
There's no fire magic, there's no like forest fires or...
Not really, or destroy mountain, or like the top tier combat magic.
And they don't have the towers that you could like bombard?
No, they don't have the blip. Like I think you can get one of those, but they're nowhere near as strong. Like the wizards in number 1 are still the strongest by far. Like Flood, you don't have access to Flood.
Yeah, Flood was fun.
I think it might be one of the best spells.
Just in any game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, oh, you're not frogmen. Well, you're doomed.
Yeah, now see, that's how the Grail should be. Okay, so new Cove Grail. Cove Grail sucks. New Cove Grail, all the water rises. All the terrain changes. So, and you give each terrain an elevation, right? Yeah. So Highlands becomes plains. Wastelands becomes...
Swamp.
Lava becomes wasteland. Mountain becomes highlands. Plains becomes water.
Swamp becomes water.
Swamp becomes water. Cracked earth becomes water, or maybe swamp. I think there's something there.
Yeah.
Like and I'm pretty sure you could. Could you?
The underground floods.
It just fills with water. Tunnel through rock. Like there's a lot of stuff they never really explored in Heroes 3, right? Like tunneling through rock, building new passages, creating like a rainbow bridge.
So for for Age of Wonders, it's like you can tunnel through rock. I understood that. For Heroes, I didn't actually think of them as in caves. I thought they were islands floating in the void.
Yeah, me too. I did too,
and I like that better still. Because they're in the underworld. They're not underground. They're in Hades. And I think Hades can be islands floating in the void.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought it was. But since it's not, tunneling. Bam.
No, it is islands floating in the void.
Okay, here's a question. Regarding... So let's say Olden Era.
And something else that they don't have a third underground level in number 5. In Age of Wonders 4.
Oh. Huh.
Or the Shadow.
Or the Shadow Realm.
Which...
Songs of the Silence has 3 layers. The new Heroes game with Mole Man. It's got an orbital layer. You're orbiting the planet. And then it's got ground and underground. But, okay, so the reason we're talking about Heroes is I was talking about Olden Era at the start. And so, Olden Era, do you think they should, which is the new Heroes game which is coming up. Heroes of Might and Magic game. Do you think they should have spells like Level Mountain or Remove Mountain or... let's say Wood Walk. You can walk through the woods. Like, it's Segamosa, right? Should they make it Segamosa? Or do you think Heroes intrinsically contains the rule that if the overmap is that way, it is that way or something.
Heroes, Might and Magic is not what a lot of people think it is. It is not a 4X game. It is.
It's an RPG.
Yeah, it is an adventure RPG.
Yeah.
So
it's just a multiplayer version of King's Bounty, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think it should have those.
But imagine in like Skyrim, if there's like, the quest is to climb to the top of the High Hrothgar, right? And you cast Remove Mountain. And isn't that fun? Like, then you just walk over to the graveyards on the ground. You're like, hey, how's it going?
I think the unfortunate situation of you have a human versus, like, you have the knights versus the dungeon. And let's say create mountain, level mountains, the top level spell.
Yeah.
And the dungeon just creates some mountains around the humans. And the humans actually can't get magic to get them out.
But what if there's like two spells, like they get rid of Dimension Door, for instance, right? They create like Heimskir's Bridge or something, where you create a rainbow, you click on one spot, and then you click on another spot within range. Now it's now a permanent feature of the map. There can only be two on the map at any time, and anyone can walk across it. Like just a very, like it's not crazy. It's just this. It's like Dimension Door, but it's a bit more, less crazy.
Yeah,
a bit more laid back. Do you think that's reasonable to have?
Yeah, I think being able to create
or like freeze
doors.
water, like. Okay, and now if you have like an Ice Queen, you can like walk to the water and it freezes. And then...
You're just making it into number one.
What did I see? I think it. No. There's a CRPG that's coming out where it looks very Baldur's Gate-y.
Yeah.
But they cast Tanglevine or something similar on a pond, and you know how in Baldur's Gate water is like a hard wall basically.
Yeah.
And then they could walk across the vines. Like, do you think something like that, like in a Divinity Original Sin or Baldur's Gate, should you be allowed to?
Oh, totally.
Like freeze water and then walk across the water.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's
because those are RPGs, right? So,
yeah. No, they're.
But you shouldn't be allowed to like destroy the castle walls or something. And...
Oh, I think you should.
Right. Okay. Well, then you shouldn't be allowed to like level a mountain and.
I mean, if you're powerful enough, I think you should in our.
The problem is it can't really like respond to you, right, in a proper way, in an RPG.
Yeah. No.
And Heroes, I think Heroes is kind of like there's a certain safety in things not changing all the time.
Yeah.
Like if you play a new person I've done this a few times. Someone who's never played Age of Wonders before, if you play against them, you can beat them by about turn 3 because they have no idea how unsafe they are when they're playing Age of Wonders. Like you just send a Raven to take their capital and they lose, and they're like, wait, what?
Or if you're playing number 1,
you just kill their hero.
You send an assassin at their hero.
Yeah, and they're like, wait, what? But there was no one near me. Or they just, you don't have to do anything in number 1.
Yeah.
They send their hero into the woods and a pack of wolves comes out and kills them. And they're like, wait, what? But what's going on? It's like,
it's always funny when you play the campaign in number 1 and you're just going around, and you've won, and the narration starts like, what?
Yeah, the evil enemy was eaten by wolves.
It's not quite as bad as Conquest of Elysium.
Yeah, but there's less safety in that game, right? Whereas in Heroes of Might and Magic, you lose your main hero, you're like, okay, I'll hire them back. Yeah. You're like, okay, I can see all my opponents, but there's no fog of war. Like, okay, should heroes? Here's a question.
Sorry, I just thought of the buff for the
Inferno.
All right.
It's the fog of war.
No. If you're if you surrender, or if your hero is killed without surrendering. Sorry, if you run away, or if your hero is killed, then the front page, they have an extra hero in their tavern. And the Inferno can recruit heroes that have been beaten recently instead of having to like cycle through them. So they get hero sniping built in. So if you have to get away from them, you have to surrender and then pay them ransom. Because they're like the Inferno Satan guys, so they snatch you.
They
fly their UFO over and suck up the hero. And
they can convince them to fall into sin and take them to their side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like the UFO better because they're technically aliens.
Yeah. Okay, so I saw some discussion on this. Should Olden Era contain fog of war? Like, you go away from an area and you can't see it anymore. That sort of thing.
No, Heroes has never had that.
But just because it's never had it doesn't mean it's not a good idea, right?
Yeah, but you want to hear the most heart-wrenching music in the world of the it's very calm, but it's got a lot of plucky piano or whatever it is. And you see the little stupid horsemen scurry around and hoover up all the resources. And they're getting closer and closer and closer to your hero. You're just trying to get to the windmill. And then they go to the windmill and they capture it before you. And then they take out your hero.
Yes, and that you're talking about the AI turn, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is an important part of the experience of where everyone is, right?
Yeah.
Like you go out into the darkness, then you have it revealed to you. And it's that feeling of safety where, okay, I'm in my town and there's no one near me. And I don't know if you've had this in number 2, especially with the Free Heroes mod, but the scariest moment, because in Heroes you always feel safe, right? You're like, okay, they can't reach me this turn. It's not like that in Age of Wonders with the Fog of War, right? But in Heroes 2, you're like, okay, or Heroes 3, they can't reach me this turn. And then you see the AI use Dimension Door, and they go like, wait, whoa, slow down, right? That's a rare experience, but when it happens, it shatters your world because you're not expecting them to move so fast across the map. And I think that says something about Heroes, that Heroes is much more measured. It's not a messy game.
Yeah.
And being able to change the outside world is messy.
Yeah, I think Heroes is a story, actually.
Like there's that WoG mod where you can destroy towns.
Yeah.
And possibly build them. That's messy, right?
Yeah.
And
you just described WoG.
Yeah. Yeah, WoG is very messy. Master of Puppets adds basically Age of Wonders stuff into the game. And it's very messy. And I think Heroes is a game that is, at its core, elegant and you can understand what's going on. But there's still enough randomness that you can never know the outcome and your decisions matter. But it's, you have one end where it's like Age of Wonders 1, and then on the other end you've got the Hero series.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something more chaotic than Age of Wonders 1 for a 4X game. Like, I guess Warlock, Master of the Arcane, sort of.
Conquest of Elysium.
Conquest of Elysium, yeah. So on one end you have Conquest of Elysium, and on the other end you have Heroes of Might and Magic.
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything quite as chaotic as Conquest.
And they're both like RPG adventure games. Yeah. But actually, even Conquest of Elysium, can you do stuff like level mountains and whatnot? I'm not sure you can.
No, you can't level mountains, I don't think, but
you can do a lot.
Yeah.
But even then, like Age of Wonders, the map can look totally different from when you started.
Yeah. That's true.
You can totally mix it up. You can put ice down.
No, Age might be the most chaotic.
Yeah. Can you do stuff in Disciples that's like... I don't think there's...
I haven't managed to get Disciples running. Even with changing the versions, it's still laggy.
Weird. Are you sure it's not just like a 15 FPS game or something?
If it is, then I can't play it.
I remember the first time I played Dominions, and I was like, wow, this game's so laggy. Because it's a turn-based game, but it doesn't look like it's a turn-based game.
No, it feels like lag. Like the mouse movements are lag. Like it's something else is going on there.
Right. Yeah, because there's some games like... what's it called? Ultima 7. It's a 10 FPS game, and you're like, wow, how did people play this? What were they doing? Yeah. But, I hope Olden Era is good, but I have very little faith.
I'll have to look at it more.
Yeah. They've done a bunch of interviews now, I think, so.
I think that the Ice whatever studio, they make okay games. Like, Idris is fun.
It's very, like, it's just a derivative of Darkest Dungeon, though, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a derivative of Darkest Dungeon, definitely.
But you get to build your monsters or something?
Yeah, you build your monsters, and you're like a super powerful wizard. You're a necromancer. It's interesting. I've never really gone super far in it. It kind of gets samey after a while, which Darkest Dungeon kind of does too, I actually feel like. It's just Darkest Dungeon, you get attached to your heroes, and so that's why it's fun. Whereas in Idris, you're sort of like, oh, I lost my undead number 37. Oh no.
Yeah, well, I don't think, like with Darkest Dungeon, you say it gets samey, but then you lose a hero and suddenly...
everything changes.
Yeah, and you're devastated. There's always that fear is keeping it interesting. Yeah,
where with Idris, like, you can have a really built up strong unit with a lot of fun items, but it's sort of just the feel of the game is... Idris is a smarmy bastard who... It's like, oh, my undead are dying. Oh, whatever.
Yeah, it's a totally different game, so it'll be... Yeah. And they really seem to be influenced by number 3. What are the best parts? Like, so, I think what they need is they need the...
They need the art of number 2.
Yeah. Well, they are already... It's the art of 3, basically, but combined with, like, Warcraft. So, it's not going to be that.
They need the art of 2.
They need the Mage Guilds of number 1, the Spell Schools of number 4, the skill system of number 5, the spell balance of number 3,
the hero leveling of number 6.
I haven't played 6. 5 is the one with the crazy big wheel and everything.
6 is nutsy. It's weird. Your heroes can evolve into different kinds of heroes, and
You can do that in 5.
it's a lot more so. They also have like alignment of chaotic and evil and good and stuff. And
I like number 7. Actually, unironically, I think is my favorite leveling up in the series.
yeah,
With that, like, you know, you can get the hero that's the explorer, and it's like you can pick up resources for free. Like, that's such a cool thing.
your units attack twice.
Yeah. It's just crazy stuff.
Yeah.
They're fun. Number 5 might be cool, but I don't understand it.
If number 7 you could look at and actually see the game, and
Well, they fixed that fog thing.
but also just like there's so many things with number 7.
Yeah.
Also, if it wasn't a Ubisoft platform,
Yeah, I think they might have fixed that too. Like, they fixed a lot of stuff with it.
Like, is 7
they just never finished it.
yeah.
Yeah. But I think it does have a lot of potential in it, number 7.
Number 5, if it's balanced, is okay, but there's just some units that are just better than any other units. Like those vampires that you don't get to attack, they dodge.
And I also don't like how number 5 looks
Yeah.
in many respects. Like, I don't like the town screens. A lot of people love the town screens. I don't like them. I don't like the unit look. I don't like the world look. I don't like how you can pivot the map and it's 3D.
Yeah.
I think that's confusing. You get lost. Again, that's the... well, even Age of Wonders, you can't rotate the map fully. You can rotate it like 12 to 15 degrees in both directions.
Yes. I think my favorite things from number 5 are the menu screen.
Where there's a little battle going on.
Yeah, where there's the Inquisitor fighting the Archdevil. I love the music, but I love the music of all the games. Number 5's music definitely holds some significance. I don't like what they did to the dungeon of adding Dark Elves into it.
I'm trying to think if there's anything I really like about number 5 at all.
I like the upgrades into alternate units.
I'm not even sure if I like that. I'm trying to...
And I like the peasants that they give you money.
You know what I was thinking about, though? That might be cool? So there's the upgrade into alternate units, right?
Yeah.
But I think that might be a bit much. Like, I think it might be a bit too much. I haven't decided yet entirely. But I was thinking, you know, like in Pokemon, there's like the Alolan forms?
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Like Alolan Black Dragon. Or Alolan Pikeman. like maybe there's
So your pikeman looks like a mafioso boss?
Maybe there's like a... Would it be like a terrain, maybe? If a town is built on that terrain, then you go there and you can get like the Alolan variant. Or maybe you can find an artifact in the world. If you bring it back to your town, you can change one of your buildings into the Alolan variant or something.
What if your starting faction, right, has influences on the other factions that they go to? So if you're a necromancer to start with and you conquer Human Town, then like the pikeman's a different pikeman.
Yeah, kind of like Age of Wonders 3, I guess. Like if you're a warlord. Then,
Yeah.
But less so. Yeah.
It's like only going to affect one unit per faction. Like, it's still quite a big chart.
I think that'd be neat, but it might be a bit too like rote after a while. Like, it'd be really fun for the first like 20 games. But if you find like, okay, this is like the Grail but slightly less rare, and you go and you bring it back to your town, and then you're like, woo, Alolan Archangels.
Maybe.
And then, but there's like 3 of them, right? So it's like, you can get the Alolan, or you can get the Hitsuian Archangel, or you can get the Totem Archangel.
Could also be based on the hero type that conquered the town.
So you have like the Warlock Archangel, or the... I think...
Because that could add an interesting element of what kind of hero do I want to actually attack this place with.
It would be neat if there was like... I'm trying to decide. Because I think one of the nice things about heroes is you can swap factions, essentially.
Yeah.
And so the heavy influence sort of traps you as a human or as a warlock, or... And also...
That's why I'm saying it's the hero that conquers it. So if you conquer it with a warlock hero, because you can purchase a warlock hero.
Yeah. But also, it's like... A Warlock Archangel is a Warlock Archangel is something that is within the realms of the Warlocks. It's within the realms of the game. Whereas if you bring something from the outside like an artifact, then it's something that isn't in every game, and so sometimes it won't be there, and some...
Yeah, that's fair enough. I can agree with that.
But maybe like a... What if, like like you were saying with your starting faction, every time you conquer a town, you still put like the Warlock spike in the town center, and you get like a different, like it actually changes the town somehow, and it's like you can put a dungeon in. Okay, let's imagine it's Heroes 2, right?
Yeah.
You start as the Warlocks. You can build a dungeon in any town.
And if you're humans, you can fortify any town.
Yeah, That's like a nice little thing, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
And if they're the necromancers, you get nothing.
But I think what would happen,
You remove the tavern if you're the necromancers.
you just burn it down. I think what would happen would be there would be a clear faction to start as, possibly, but it would be kind of like you would basically have 7 playthroughs, and then you'd always play as the warlocks or something, right? Like,
Well, you'd think that, but that's to say, like, oh, you always play the necromancers, but people don't.
but that's because they can go and they can take a human city, and then they can be more humans, right? But so there's always going to be the shift. But this way, it's like, yeah, well, I want to do a warlock playthrough, but I'm going to have
Right, we do have to consider.
I want to have a dungeon. So
What does that one guy say? That people always optimize the fun.
yeah, Sid Meier. People will always optimize the fun out of everything.
Which honestly, that's. Do you know much about the latest Civ game?
Civ 7?
Yeah.
No.
So the game Rev Workers.
Right. Yeah.
Civ 5 has the worker mini game. Basically, you send workers out to build at the start, and that's sort of what you're doing with things. You decide how many workers you're going to have. But there's kind of like the obvious things to build. You build the mines on the hills. You build the farms on the fields. There's nothing really that you do. Like maybe you build markets later game, and if you automate your workers, they absolutely love putting them everywhere. That might not be the right choice. But in reality, basically, it's a really low skill ceiling that there is an optimal way to play with workers. And then you have to play the scrubbing up nuclear waste minigame, which isn't fun. And so basically so in Civ 6, they went, all right, we have these city tile things where you have to fit them together. And what are they called? The districts?
Yeah.
And I can't wrap my head around them personally. Districts, apparently, like, you can get insane yield bonuses by doing district stuff. And I personally don't like that myself. Because it's kind of the same thing with the farms. However, it seems to be like bigger bonuses.
Yeah, it's doable for huge bonuses, but there's always that feeling of placing suboptimally, which isn't fun because you're forced to, or because you don't know what you're doing.
And one of the things I like about 5 is you can get a great engineer and you can engineer a tile, or you can choose to build something instantly, or you can get a scientist and you can scientist a tile, and then you might not have the farm bonus from it anymore. But anyways, so what they're doing in Civ 7 is they're just going, all right, this is just a worker mini game that you play, so we're just flinging that away. Because, again, there's a very low skill ceiling, so we're just going to get rid of that.
Okay.
And they still have the tile placements for the districts. I don't know if they're going to have insane district bonus, and they also have the tile placing for the wonders. I don't know how I feel about that, because I kind of do like the workers, even if it's this sort of rote mini game.
Well, I think
because I like building roads with the workers and the putting down fortresses with them.
Yeah, and you have to defend the workers from barbarians if they go out and build a long road, and that's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Or, well, the biggest problem with workers in number 5 is it's actually kind of mid to late game where you have like 20 workers and they have nothing to do, and that does become pretty boring.
Or you have to do a ton of things with them and you run out of time. There's like those two different sides to it.
And I think Civ 6 did a really good job of workers have 3 charges, so you use them and then they're done, and you don't need them, which I thought was really well done. Civ 2, I seem to remember never having a problem with workers in Civ 2. Like, I was never...
I thought we played Civ 3.
No,
it was 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, at least the one I played.
That was the same one, where you would stack samurais on top of each other and put them in a tank.
Yeah, no, that's Civ 2. I never had much of an issue with them, but maybe I wasn't making enough.
Yeah.
And I think in Civ 2, was it only workers could build forts, or is that true in all of the games? I don't remember.
Yeah. But
so they're getting rid of that in Civ 7. Anyways. Yeah.
And Civ 1 didn't have workers.
I haven't played Civ 1. So.
And one of the things is Civ does change. Like, it can't be the same game each time, I don't think. Like, I think...
My least favorite part of Civ games, I think, is actually the civilian menu. I think Civ 5 and 6 did a pretty good job of making it less annoying.
Yeah.
Actually, Civ 6 is pretty...
I like Civ 5 civilian menu, personally.
Yes, Civ 6.
And I like shoving civilians into tiles and putting them into I actually really like that.
Yeah, I think 5 and 6 did an okay job of that, so that's something that would be okay. My biggest concern with Civ 7, knowing basically nothing about the game, well, my 2 biggest concerns would be actually having good AI, unlike Civ 6, and the next concern would be that I don't trust 2K? Who makes this? Is it Firaxis?
Yeah, Firaxis.
Yeah. I don't trust Firaxis because Civ 6 needed another DLC.
Yeah.
And instead of creating that DLC, they created a bunch of mini expansions it needed another expansion, and instead of creating another expansion, they made a bunch of mini DLCs, which did nothing.
One of my other things that has annoyed me is it's the same thing that happened to Age of Wonders 4, which is they have slopified Civ 7.
Yeah, they've added like 20 meaningless cosmetics.
No,
DLCs
this is Civ 6 you're talking about. Civ 7 is going to be slopified.
How so?
Because your leader isn't bound to your starting faction.
Right.
To your starting civilization, and you can change civilizations as you play. So you can be Egyptians, and then you can change to the Romans later on.
So by slopified, you mean they have
made it more of a mire of choices instead of a solid choice at the beginning that actually has meaning.
Yeah, they've made every playthrough the same because you can do everything in every playthrough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they've made it all this.
And maybe they'll actually manage it well. I heard
the same milieu.
Pateo, McWhiskey, and Spiffing Briff were talking about it. Now, I'm not going to trust them completely because Rexus flew them out to a pre-release event.
Yeah.
And anyone who gets that sort of treatment will be biased.
Yeah, even if you're like, I'm going to be totally unbiased, just seeing people that care about something, you're like, oh, I don't want to be mean to these guys. Like, they obviously care. Like, it's not even that they are being bought and paid or anything or bribed. Yeah. It's just people treat you nice and they're nice people. You're going to be positively affected towards them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they did have some good defenses of that. But I still don't know how I feel.
And what is the Civ changing going to be? Like, if you can go from...
You can change it once per age, and there's 4 ages in the game, I think.
But if you go from, like, the UK to the United States, that kind of makes sense, right? Like,
yeah.
Or if you go from, I don't know, like, Barbary Coast to Morocco, like, that makes sense. But is it going to be that, or is it going to be, like, you can go from South Africa to Japan or something?
I don't know. I think there might be some small limitation, but it might be that you could go from South Africa to Japan.
Like, if it's a sort of just a culture you've incorporated into your empire, or, like, kind of like in Europa Universalis, right?
Yeah.
They do that quite well, I think, where...
Yeah, one of my other concerns with that, though, is because they're separating the leaders from the faction as well.
So you can have, like, Cleopatra in charge of the United States or something?
Yeah. And that might make it so there is more optimal leaders.
Right. And instead of, I want to play as Japan today, it's like, no, no matter who I play as, I'm always going to have Alexander the Great or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the banes of video games, and again, this in my optimizing play, is casual play getting murdered by optimal play. Yeah. This guy released this great little video where it's this first-person shooter, and these 2 guys have joined. It's like, oh, this is such a fun game. No, we're having so much fun. What weapon should I pick next? I don't know, because there's no meta yet. And then this guy just jumps up from behind them. They're standing on a bridge, and he has a sniper rifle. And he shoots both of them, and then it cuts to a different scene where this guy's dueling shotguns, and he's jumping all over the map, doing these crazy slides and flips and taking people out. And it just shows, like, meta evolution. As, this game sucks, yeah, and then both people disconnect.
Well, that's kind of the magical thing about Melee, like Super Smash Bros. Melee, and Heroes of Might and Magic 3. These games never were balanced, right?
Yeah.
And yet, for some reason, despite having never been balanced, they're constantly evolving in what is the way to play and what you should be doing and how you should be playing, which I think people should take Dota has the alternative strategy of break everything every few months and then let people figure it out again. But I think that if you just try to create a game that's fun, the depth will be there.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to enforce it by doing... Like, obviously, if you have a really boring mechanic, overhaul it. Like, Abalon, which is a deck builder sort of RPG game, they overhauled their equipment system, and it made the game, like, 3 times as fun.
Yeah.
It's like, if you have this boring system, sure, get rid of it and fix it for something better. But there's a depth in your game that, pay attention. Just don't abandon your game to this false concept of balance, I guess, is the...
Honestly, I feel like one of the problems with the...
And the meta.
The meta evolution thing. I was playing a board game against our dad, and it's a board game we've all played before. I can't remember what it's called at the moment, but he had gone really into it, and so... No, sorry, we haven't played. It's just me and him have played it. He'd played with some friends, and he'd looked up some of the strategies that you do. And that kind of upset me playing against him, because he's like going for the strategies he'd looked up. So I'd rather we figure these out in the playing them than looking up what's the best strategies of this game.
Yeah, it depends what you want the game to be, right? Like, if you want the game to be the
like even
integrating of the strategies, or if you want the game to be the because a game can still be fun if everyone's playing at a really top tier level where they know stuff. But
so Baldur's Gate 3, another friend of mine, he's really into this game. He's played it a lot, and he knows all like the meta items, where the good items are, like the meta builds you get. And I remember the first time I played multiplayer with him, there was a part of the game which I just figured out how to break by stealthing. And this isn't any meta. This is like, oh, you do this build here, and you do this, and you get this all together, and you can be super strong. So, literally, I figured out how to break Galarian's engine.
Well, that's the same thing, though.
Yeah.
But there isn't a difference between those two things, right? Like, the difference, I guess you could say, is that you didn't read about it online. But it's the same experience for the other players, where you have a huge advantage over them because you're doing something non-standard, right? So, the difference... Like, you could say that we want people to figure it out themselves, I guess.
I think the difference for me with that mentally is the breaking it that way is the White Phosphorus versus the T90 of, all right, so I have this build order that it's like you go get the boar at this point, you go do all this stuff.
But boar luring and deer pushing, at one point, that was all an interesting, crazy strategy that someone came up with, right? Like,
yeah, I guess
those weren't standard things, and then someone came up with them and they started doing them. Like, I'm thinking, like, Smash Bros, for instance, you could just be playing Smash Bros, and then someone realizes that if you hide behind a wall and shoot at people and duck behind it, you're going to do better, right? If you have Samus or something, you're like, pew, 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 and you're going to do better. And then people are going to have to adapt to that, and the way that professional Smash has adapted to that is they put a time limit on the game, basically. And they ban certain maps where that's possible.
Yeah.
So you look at, I think it was Melee, it might have been Smash 64. There was a game where there was a pro player who kept saying, you need to ban Zelda's Castle, you need to ban Zelda's Castle, you need to ban Zelda's Castle. And they're like, no, we're not going to ban it. So finally, during the finals, he played as, I think it was Kirby. And he spent like 12 minutes just avoiding every single hit from his opponent using Zelda's Castle just to prove a point. He's like, look, no one can touch you if you just follow this basic strategy. And then okay, we need to ban this. So the goal at the end of the day, theoretically, is for people to have fun, I guess, right? So where are we getting with this?
So, okay, here's the difference with what... Oh, this actually annoyingly goes against something else. But anyways, so the difference being is that this is a list that you look up to do the best, or it's a list of checkboxes that you complete. Whereas the ducking and diving stealth thing is something you can mess up, and it's something that actually has skill expression beyond, this is what I look up to do. It's like, alright, this video game, the shotgun is the best item, so you get the shotgun. Whereas my expression has skills, what I like is, if you get up on this tower, then the bug's AI breaks.
Well, does that exist? Like, in this video game, the shotgun is the best weapon, right? Does that actually exist?
Yes.
Because what I'm thinking of is Smash 4. Marth does more damage than Lucina, right? So Marth is the best swordsman character. Except he's not. All the pros play Lucina. And the reason is because it's too hard to play as Marth, right? Like, Marth is way too inconsistent with the tip. It works on weird janky logic that no one understands.
Yeah.
And the same is true for... So you can say, oh yeah, this weapon does just more damage. But that doesn't mean people can utilize it well.
I think Smash benefits from less options.
Or you look at, let's go to your T90 example. You say you got to get the boar at this time. Getting the boar is not something most players can do. Like, boar luring is not something like 60 or 75% of players can do, right? So, and especially if you're boar luring with your town center or something.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that only the top 1%
I think
can
that
do.
T90 was a bad example.
But what I'm getting at is that the meta doesn't just hand you the keys to the kingdom, right? Even if there is a meta. You actually have to be good still.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you coming up with your own meta that works against your friends doesn't...
It wasn't even playing against them. This is playing with them.
Yeah. But yeah, okay, so...
It's rather that you can look up the best item and you can equip the best item, or you can look up builds that absolutely break the game, versus playing the game in ways that work without the optimal build, but it's like the optimal way to play?
like, I would get it if your point is something like you want to discover it for yourself.
That's also another part I do want to discover for myself.
I think my main issue with meta is actually the same issue I have with stuff like teaching English in high schools, where it gives the illusion of complete knowledge. But
Yeah.
the meta isn't actually... When people talk about the meta, which is kind of a weird sentence to say in the first place, but when people talk about that, what they're talking about is the current idea of what works. But the people at the forefront are always pushing it and changing it, and it isn't complete by any means, right? Like
No.
And same with like an English class. It's not necessarily getting pushed, but the teachers breaking something down into component parts doesn't actually mean you understand it at all, right? Like someone, like you go up to someone with a piano and you're like, okay, this key is A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Bam, you're the best pianist on earth. It's like, no, there's a bit more to it than just knowing all the key names, right? So I think why I don't like the meta as a concept, as the like metagaming is a different story, but why the meta as a concept is because developers, let's say the olden era people, will say, okay, so the meta is hero chaining, so we've got to make hero chaining work better, or we've got to get rid of hero chaining, or whatever it is, instead of let's sit back and see if that goes away on its own, or if it turns out to be even better, or if something new comes along. Like let's instead of focusing on balance here, what would be cool? Would it be cool if heroes can catapult their armies across to each other, or would it be cool if you can summon a giant fiery portal that they can walk through? And
That's something I take from number 5.
what's that?
The caravans.
Isn't that number 4?
No, that's number 5.
Oh.
Number 4, your certain units have enough leadership that they can walk by themselves on the map and interact as if it's Age of...
Right. But I thought there was like these little caravans that like drive across the map.
Yeah, that's number 5.
Oh, that's number 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, those... I don't know if I like them or not.
I
Would you also have them for like windmills? I think I would. Or maybe give you the option to build one.
Yeah, I think you could invest resources into it.
Can't you do that in number 5 as well? You can like upgrade mines in number 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of a thing.
Like
I
maybe
guess.
there's it was an extra cost to send them to you, so like caravan costs a little bit of money to caravan. Like it takes a certain amount of turns to get to you as well. They have a move speed.
I think time is enough of a cost. Like I don't know what they did, but I think time would be enough of a cost for me.
Because there's caravans in Heroes Hour as well.
Yes, but your units can also move on their own in Heroes Hour sometimes. I haven't really figured that out. I have had my units move on their own, I'm pretty sure, in Heroes Hour without heroes. I think if you just tell them to leave the town when there's no hero there, they just leave. I think that's how it works. But there is also caravans for sure, yeah. It's so with... Oh. Yeah. It's coming to me. Wait, here it comes. So there's... you might think a great way... Jordan Peterson recently went to the Senate in the United States to talk about how he wanted to help with health with people, right?
Yeah.
And so he gave a Senate talk to all the senators. And so on the one hand, you go, oh yeah, this is cool. Like he's telling them like we need to research health and use a proper scientific method to do it instead of studies where you just study broad, vastly varying diets and call it a study, right? He wants an actual scientific process to see which foods are healthy and how people should eat, how individuals should eat. But I was watching it. I couldn't help but think Hitler would have disapproved because...
There it is.
Well, I thought we should wrap up, so...
There it is.
I thought a nice Hitler to wrap up, and...
So, how's your...
So, because, I was talking about how Hitler said there was the problems with those various parties.
Yeah.
Where the one, they were aiming for the middle class instead of the masses, and then the other one gave a specific plan instead of a vision. And so one of the other problems he had with them was that they were going into government and trying to change people's minds. But he said a parliament is actually incentivized to not have their mind changed. Like learning is actually antithetical to parliamentarianism. And the reason for that is because your job, if you're a good member of parliament, is to represent the people. And so if the people aren't telling you something that you need to be doing this, then you have no reason to be doing it. So if someone comes in and says you need to do this, if you listen to them, you'll lose your job. And so the only reason a parliamentarian has to change is if all their constituents go to them and say, you need to change, you need to change, you need to change. Which means you might as well be going to the constituents in the first place and telling them, all right, we want you to tell your parliamentarian this is what you want. So Jordan Peterson was going to the senators instead of going to the masses and saying, like, you want health, you want... But what I would be curious about is Hitler's opinion on like social media, like YouTube and whatnot, because what Jordan Peterson didn't actually go to the Senate, right? Like he did, but what he actually did was he said, "Look, I went to the Senate, and this is what I said." Yeah. So now the masses can watch on YouTube, which is far more people that were those in the Senate who, if you watch the video, they're all on their phones, just like Hitler said they'd be, basically. He didn't say phones, but he said like they have no reason to listen, right? Because that's not the point. But the point is that people go, "Oh, he's in the government. That's important. Therefore, this is important, and we should pay attention." And then we'll go and talk to people about it. So it's sort of a propaganda piece that Jordan Peterson did in a way of, look at me, I'm talking to the government. And the government, they're not going to listen. But the people to say, oh, he went to the government, that's important. And then the government might listen because the people listen, because the people saw that he went to the government. But,
well, so in the thing you're talking about Parliament and the sort of democratic thing in general, it's a clip that's been around a long time. And I think it's a guy from the Middle East. And he's talking about democracy. And he, I don't think I agree with him, but you can feel it sometimes.
Oh, the guru, whatever his name is. It's like, and the people, and the thing about a parliament is that you must listen to the will of the people. But the people, they are retarded.
Yes.
I think that was an Indian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you semi-agree with him.
Well, that's,
and
there's this political philosophy of the idea that elites should rule rather than the plebs, right? Yeah. And that is one of the foundations, is that you look at the average person and you go, oh, should the average person really be in charge? But I think, you're the average person to someone else. Yeah. So it is important to keep in mind.
But it's 50% of people
are below average. Yeah. But that's true in every category. So you're in that category for something, right? Like how's your deep sea fishing skills or something, right?
Exactly. I honestly, we should go back to the Rhodesian model.
What's the Rhodesian model? Isn't Rhodesia like an African country that is now called like Senegal or something? Oh, Zimbabwe?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, do you know the tragic story of Rhodesia the Wise?
It was a British colony, and then they had a lot of inflation.
No.
I mean, yeah, like a Zimbabwe dollar is worth like...
Yeah, but that's not what happened to them exactly.
Right, okay.
So, Rhodesia was one of the African colonies from Britain. And when Britain decided to decolonialize from Africa, part of it was because they couldn't afford it anymore, but also part of it was actually a liberal philosophy of the majority should rule. That was the liberal philosophy, and a lot of their governments throughout the world wasn't the majority rule. And so that's part of the reason why they left. And when they told Rhodesia to do that, Rhodesia said no. And so Rhodesia separated from the UK and was its own country. And in Rhodesia, to be able to vote, you had to be educated and you had to own land. That was the two rules. And because of that, the vast majority of people who could vote were white. But the number of local African Rhodesians, I guess, the native population, were also slowly increasing of those that could vote. And Rhodesia was ridiculously prosperous. However, the communists at the time, basically a lot of Africa was becoming communist. And so the Russian government was basically funding other African countries to send communist guerrillas into Rhodesia to try to destabilize it. But the fire force in Rhodesia, which was their military militia, was amazing. And they basically could stop the communist guerrillas anywhere. Like, they'd quickly get to the situation, put down the rebellion and fix it. But then the West, the UK and America basically said, Rhodesia, you're not liberal enough for us because it's not a representation of the masses, so we're embargoing you. And so they stopped sending oil and trading oil with Rhodesia, and they stopped trading metal and basically all supplies. And so Rhodesia could no longer support itself, and the communist guerrillas managed to basically kick the Rhodesians out. They had an election, the Communist Party won, a dictator took over for the next 20 years or something, and the Zimbabwe dollar became terrible. And so Rhodesia, a lot of people consider that Rhodesia was betrayed by the UK because they were abandoned, and they had a working system. And there's still people who call themselves Rhodesians who live in their own small segregated communities in Zimbabwe and they have like their own power production plants they set up, and their own communities, and they're all hyper productive, very good communities.
I wonder. I heard someone say today. There was a discussion on the idea of might makes right and natural rights and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And someone said that murder is wrong because we can observe societies where murder is allowed and they fall apart because nobody trusts each other and everything falls apart. That didn't seem right to me. Like, obviously that's a bad thing to have a society fall apart and everyone being allowed to murder. But surely murder, like, imagine a society where everyone murders each other. Like, murder is totally legal. You can kill people whenever you want. But society is doing really good. Like, I'm thinking maybe like a gold rush town or something, you know? Like, things are booming even though everyone can kill each other at a drop of a hat. Is that good just because society is prospering?
No.
Like, is murder not intrinsically evil or something, you know? Like, and maybe you can believe it's not intrinsically evil and that all foundations are based on the good to society. But why is society your metric, right? That's sort of a... At some point, you're choosing your axiom. That's what... as much as I don't really like the guy, Yuval Noah Harari has said. He said, at some point, your axiom is founded on nothing other than just a gut feeling, right?
Yeah.
I don't actually think he's right because I think... Well, sort of. If your axiom is God, right, then I don't think that's just a gut feeling because you have this supernatural entity that is the foundation of your beliefs, right? However, your belief in God could be argued as a gut feeling, right? Yeah. So if you're an atheist, then I think he's probably right. But if you're not, it depends on your point of view, if he's right or not.
So are you saying that Rhodesia no longer having a civilization doesn't justify the inequality that they had within their society?
Yeah, that's or I'm not saying that explicitly because I'm not sure, right? Because maybe a representative voting system isn't the be all and end all, right? Like I'm not totally opposed to the idea of a monarchy, right? The problem with monarchy is that there's room for abuse, right? There's room for abuse in a democracy as well. And the nice thing about a monarchy is there's less government officials in theory.
So what is the problem with landowner or service guaranteeing citizenship?
Well, because you said they had two things, right? It was landowner and education. And my problem with education, for instance, in the Yukon and maybe all of Canada now, I'm not sure, to get a degree, you need to take First Nations history as one of the prerequisites, right?
Yeah.
And that course is not exactly First Nations history, right? Like, First Nations history can be fairly interesting, but it's a lot of like why colonizers are bad type stuff, right? Like not entirely, and it probably depends on the teacher. And I haven't actually taken the course, so I can't say for sure, but I've taken other courses tangentially related, and a lot of them were like colonizers bad and Europeans bad, right? So if education is your prerequisite for voting, then
I don't know if education was. I do know property was. It's like it was property and something else was a prerequisite for the Rhodesians.
Okay.
And I thought it was education, but
yeah,
it might have been education of you can write in English to a point where other people can read it. Which, I mean, for me, that might actually suck because people might not be able to understand me.
But also, so education is one I'm always leery of because it's basically, unless you have our brainwashing, you're not allowed to vote, right? And so I'm always, like, there was...
But would you be willing to accept, like, if you're able to, like, 1 + 1 = 2 and you can write and comprehend a basic sentence?
No.
No?
No, I don't, because I don't trust whoever comes up with the metric, and the metric could change over time if it was in place, and the skills that you deem necessary are going to change from time to time.
Okay.
Right? Like, if society collapses, you want the hunter-gatherers who can't do 1 + 1 = 2, right?
Okay.
So, not that one. Now, as for land ownership, I think I'm more benevolent towards that idea, but I do wonder about the consequences of it. For instance, if I was a power-hungry landowner, I wouldn't want other people to own land because that would dilute my vote, right? So I would want a country like Canada where I import as many migrants as I can to drive housing prices up and to make people as poor as possible so that only me and my buddies are voting. So, like, that's just one off the top of my head, like, downside I could see where you're not necessarily interested in the country, you're interested in keeping power. Whereas if everyone can vote no matter what, then no one can take your power from you, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think in Canada you can even vote if you're in prison.
What about a certain, like, not land ownership, but a certain tax bracket?
I think that's the same thing. You want to keep the people poor, right?
Okay.
Like, in the United States, I don't think you can vote if you're a prisoner. And I don't actually like that. I think, because then you just arrest...
Yeah.
Like, obviously, to make an actual difference in the States, where it's roughly a 50-50 vote every time, you'd have to arrest, like, like 10 million people to make a difference in the vote, so it's not viable. Yeah. But I don't like that potential exists, right? Yeah. Like I like Canada's system a bit more, I think, where anyone can vote even if they're in prison.
Yeah.
Service guaranteeing citizenship, I'm more on board with. Like you say, yeah, I care about this country, obviously. Like I have, like...
Because that's part of the thing with land ownership is you have actual investment in the country.
I think...
That's the idea behind it.
You could do it in the reverse. Like the United States, what they do is they say you're part of the draft, right? So it's kind of the reverse. It's you are giving your service because you're on call at all times, essentially. So therefore you have the vote. Well, the men do anyways. Women get a free vote.
Yeah, which...
But...
How has that gone for the America?
You take someone like Stephen Hawking, let's say, right? Now, I don't think intelligence means you're wise by any means, right? Or a good person even. But let's say Stephen Hawking's, a very smart man.
Yeah.
He's obviously not going to be serving on the front lines, right? Like fighting or something. So should he be excluded from the vote because of his capabilities? And there's this concept, I think, as well, of fairness. Like, it's not fair that people who are born crippled or mentally disabled can't vote.
Then again, do you want someone who's mentally disabled to vote?
It depends, again, because there's different, like ADHD people aren't allowed to be drafted, right?
Yeah.
People with Down syndrome, as I roughly understand Down syndrome, it's more about the speed you learn things than any sort of intelligence, right? Like you're just really slow to learn things, but they stick just as well as anyone else. So it gets kind of strange there. But on the other hand, I don't know if fairness even matters, right? Like it could just be like Hitler's argument again was you want the leader not who represents the people, but who makes the country great.
Yeah.
Now, my problem with Hitler's method is that the metric for the leader, in Hitler's case, was you make the country great, right?
Yeah.
But there's different metrics, right? Do you want humanity to be great? Do you want your people to be great? Do you want your country to be great? They're all similar, but they could all have a different result, right?
Yeah.
Like, it might be, like, if you want the greatest country on earth, maybe you have to kill your neighboring country. But if you want the most moral citizens on earth, maybe you have to let another country kill your citizens, right? Like, it gets...
Let's look back at Zimbabwe and Rhodesia, because the metric of measurement partly is going to be level of civilization here, and that may be a good thing, may not be a good thing. But so Callum went to Zimbabwe, and they hired a policeman to be their guide and bodyguard while he and his friend went around, and they went into an abandoned train station, and the trains are all just sitting there slowly rotting into the ground, and they're walking around them. And the policeman who was with them told Callum proudly, it's like, my father rode on one of these while they're still running. And they're no longer running. They're just in kind of a terrible shape. And that was kind of sad. And then another thing in the society is Callum somehow managed to ingratiate himself with local militia force. And he... got a hat off one of them. Like, this was a private security, and he basically got a hat and uniform off them because they liked him, and he's a charismatic guy. And so he's wearing these uniforms, and people started avoiding him, and, like, people are really nice to him, like, overly nice, because this military terrifies people, and they have to, like, jump to it or get killed. And Rhodesia has a huge amount of problems, and it's, like, open sewage, falling apart, terrible economy, low levels of education now. Like, power doesn't always work. People starve.
Yeah, and
it used to be one of the jewels of it was the breadbasket of Africa. Like, Rhodesia was feeding the rest of Africa. It was a net food exporter. It exported 60% of the grain it produced. Now Rhodesia, or I guess Zimbabwe is what it is now. Zimbabwe now is a net importer of food, and they don't produce food anymore.
And I think that comes back to the Inquisitor and Jesus story again, where the Inquisitor says, yes, you and I both went through the desert and we starved and we ate insects and dug for roots in the desert and we were close to God. But the average person can't or doesn't want to do that. And so shouldn't we give them bread and give them wine and tell them how they should act instead of telling them to go into the desert for themselves and starve and eat? So depending on your metric, having trains and food and closed sewers isn't necessarily better, right? Like, I'm sure the Chinese have nice sewer systems, for instance. But do you want to live in, like, a country... And this is a question. This isn't rhetorical. This is just a straight up question. Do you want to live in a country where your government has absolute control over you, well, China doesn't exactly, but where your government has absolute control over you, but you have nice clean sewers? Or do you want to live in one where you are free to do what you want, but you're poor and dirty and there's gangs roaming in the streets? And
I don't think they're even free to do what they want in Rhodesia.
Yeah.
I think in Zimbabwe. I think they are more free under Rhodesia than they were.
Well,
now.
But it depends on freedom, right? Like, they're not free to vote in the old system, but
they're not free to vote now as a communist. Like it was.
Communists, you can vote under communist systems.
Yeah, you vote for you put your vote in this box, or you go into that box.
Yeah, but you can vote, right? Like there are different freedoms there.
And more people were able to vote in Rhodesia. They just had their voting system, and I think one of the it was interesting. So I read this short story about this gay man who lives in Canada now. He's from Egypt, and when he was a kid growing up in Egypt, he had 3 sisters, and it was him and his mother and father. And he's talking about his memories in Egypt when he was a kid, and he and all his older sisters, they went to the beach, and his mother was wearing a bikini, his sisters were wearing bikinis, and the people are having fun running around the beach. And Egypt became a Muslim Sharia country, and his sisters that remain there, when they go to the beach, they have to be like fully covered up. He can't even go to Egypt anymore because he'll get killed, so he can't visit his family who still live there. They have to come to Canada to see him. And he was lamenting that he doesn't think that Egypt will ever be the way it was before. And he was talking about other cases of in India. He's talking about, he was interviewing this man who was saying, it's like this older man, and his son was there with him, and this older man was saying, I wish the British were back in charge in India, because like certain things worked better. And there's cases where people reflect on that, and again, like the guy saying, my dad rode on a train, and he's proud of that fact. It's like, my dad actually rode one of these trains back when they were still running.
But on the other hand, when the British were in charge, you had all this moral degeneracy going on, people in bikinis on the streets, but now, they're going to go to heaven, right? They're going to, they're actually being morally upstanding, decent people.
Yeah.
So,
well,
now, not to be clear to people listening, I don't think I am, at least, a moral relativist. I think there are more or less correct moral paths.
I think I'm a moral imperialist myself.
Well, imperialism would suggest that you try to impose your ways on others. So you could be you could be an imperialist, but objectivist would be that there are correct morals, and an imperialist would be that you try to impose your morals on others, whether or not they're correct. You could be an objectivist and an imperialist, of course. But
I guess a semi-imperialist then, semi-moral imperialist, which is I think that there is a better moral system, and if you're going to live in the same civilization as I am that has that moral system, you damn well better embrace it.
What if you yourself you move to a country that doesn't have a better moral system than the one you know? Then do they have to embrace your moral system?
I think a part of my imperialism would be that if I haven't conquered them, then I'd have to embrace theirs.
So that wouldn't... no, because imperialism would be that you enforce your way on them, right? Because, that's what imperialists do. They go to other countries and they conquer them. That's...
Yeah. But I was saying, if I was to go to a different place, I'd embrace their moral system, I think.
So that's not imperialism then, that's nationalism, right? Like, your country is... you're a moral nationalist.
Yeah, sure. But I don't disagree with sending in the pith hat men to stop people burning their wives.
When that's what they do.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know about other stories from India where, villages of innocent, I forgot the name, but it's basically the worst stain in British history, according to a lot of British historians. They just went in and murdered a village for no reason. I can't. It was 150 people or 500 people, somewhere in there. They just killed them all. And it's because when you have that power over people,
yes,
then you start using it, right?
And again, there's those double stains. So I was reading about the final umbrella agreement here. I read a bit of it last night. It's a massive document. It has 300 pages. And then I was going through, I was just looking up some stuff, and I came across this very interesting thing that this guy wrote. So yesterday, to date this, I guess, we had our Truth and Reconciliation Day. And It's a relatively new holiday we have, and it was in reflection. It basically started because they did deep ground penetrating sonar on a school in Kamloops, a residential school in Kamloops, and it looked like there was around 100 to 300 graves, and not a single grave has been exhumed, or not a single bone has been found anyways in the whole thing, and there's actually no proof that anyone was buried there or mass murder happened.
Yeah.
However, we do have a lot of stories of very bad things happening in residential schools. However, what this one guy pointed out was there is this quote, which is the last residential school, I think it closed in 1987.
I think it was like 2008.
Or 2008, but it's like this stain on Canada. That's what I was saying. Like the last one closed. Let's go with 2008. And he said, the reason why it was open until 2008 is the local community of First Nations people wanted it to stay open. The chief wanted it to be open, and he finally got pressured to close it.
Yeah.
And they liked that school.
Well, it became a different beast after a while, right?
Yeah, it became a different beast. But also what he pointed out is we will hear about the negative experiences in negative schools because they stand out. However, in a lot of cases, it was, well, not benign. It wasn't horrible murder and killing and rape and abuse.
This is Dan Carlin. He did a podcast with someone a while back where he pointed out the difference between like a historian and like an academic, basically. Yeah. Or not a historian necessarily, but a history fan, an academic. He said an academic or someone with that sort of mindset learns that, let's say George Washington beat his dogs, right? Let's say, he did something mean. He did something awful. Or Churchill was a bit of a tyrant when he was in power, right? So they learned that this grand historical figure had a dark side or a negative side or whatever it might be. And so they go, actually, they were evil, right?
Yeah.
And he says, no. They were people.
Yeah.
Everything's mixed, right? And so Washington wasn't just this saint that, founded America. Like he's pretty amazing in many ways, but he had some downsides.
Yeah.
I don't think he actually beat his dogs, but he I'm sure he had some downsides because he was a human being, right? And same with Churchill. Churchill was a bit of a tyrant, but he also might have been the only person that could have saved the UK from Hitler.
Yeah.
So, there's that. But I think the opposite is also true, where the British brought peace around the world. A lot of people loved their rule, and these schools, they clothed and sheltered some people, they helped them out, they took them from abusive homes, whatever else it might be. It doesn't change that they were also taking people from homes and they're abusive.
It doesn't change that the company gave smallpox blankets away.
Yeah, or that Britain took away the right for these countries to rule themselves.
So there's something interesting on that with Canada, actually. We're actually in a very unique part of Canada in relative to this, because we have something called the Final Umbrella Agreement. And part of why that is interesting is there's treaties that were signed throughout all Canada, basically deals between the British Crown and the different First Nations groups in those areas. Those were actually never signed in the Yukon, because they got to the Yukon a lot later. The Final Umbrella Agreement was signed, I think, in the 90s or 80s, like 87 or 93. And it was agreement among the 13 First Nations of the Yukon, I think. Anyways, and it's a very large document. But so there's this whole thing about that the British didn't honor their treaties and they stole a bunch of land in Canada. And they're because you look at the United States, and the United States was conquered. Like the Americans fought a war against the different First Nations there, and they conquered it. And there's a few cases where they did have treaties, but for the vast majority, the United States was actually conquered. Whereas Canada technically was never conquered. And so that's why a lot of it's called stolen, or the unceded land, or whatever group. So the treaties that were written, someone actually went down and basically said, so the British understood when they made these treaties and communicated that they would get the land from these people, and for that land they bought for upfront price and a stipend, and they'd have this land and they'd have certain hunting rights. Like they basically had this agreement that the British thought they were basically purchasing Canada from the various different groups. The First Nations of these different groups thought that British settlers would be allowed to lease their land and farm on them they'd get a certain amount of money, they'd be guaranteed their hunting rights, they'd get to keep their land and keep their ancestral land. And so they actually interpreted the treaties differently. And because of this different interpretations, within the last 100 years, the Canadian courts actually settled what those treaties meant and looked at both sides saying, okay, the Crown believed this, the Natives groups thought they saw this. We're going to have a massive court case on this and actually settle it of what the proper response is. And so in the proper treaties, it's settled and the land wasn't stolen in Canada. Now, it might have been a bad deal that they got, but in the final settlement, only in the Yukon is it actually unceded. We're basically the only place that's allowed to say unceded, because everywhere else is actually, it's finalized in law. And so if you go down to the direct lawfare without activists on either side saying what they are, the rest of Canada is settled. And we're settled too, because we have the final umbrella agreement. And so everything we have is actually as it.
Well, we had, now I'm very unclear on the history here, but we had Elijah Smith up here who basically established a second government with, like, kind of outside our government, right? A First Nation government. He united the tribes behind him, basically, and created a unique government here.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear about, like, colonialization was good, actually, right? The one thing I want to keep in mind in my own head, or the one thing I hope for, is that when the Indians finally finish colonializing us, that we'll be able to say, oh yeah, we missed the Indian rule, or we got the great treaties from India, or whatever it might be, Yeah. Because you can't make any complaint about immigration or argument for immigration without also being for colonialization, or I think it's the same thing roughly, right?
I disagree with you.
Okay.
Because, like I said, I'm an imperial nationalist, or whatever, as he put it, call myself a nationalist, I guess. I think that the true British spirit, moral system, whatever you may call it. Yes, there was mistakes. There was the massacre in India of 100 people, or 150, 300 people.
Yeah.
Which is a stain on the British record, and they all recognize that as a stain of what they did. And some of those people were punished for that. There was recompense for it. And there's mistakes made. The residential schools were not great. The bringing smallpox was not great. Smallpox one, I can't really blame them for until we get to the smallpox blankets, but that's much later.
Yeah.
But I actually believe that they have a good form of government and a good moral system, and I think that it is good and right. Like the honesty box in Scotland, where they set things up and then locals pay what it costs and then they take it, as opposed to some immigrants or legal immigrants come and they just take it without paying and they steal it, and because they don't have that same culture.
Right, but then you could say that the Indians will think the same thing too.
Yes, they do think that, and they're allowed to think that. But I am allowed to say, so what? I will fight you for it.
Yeah,
and whoever comes out of the end wins. And
but then that goes.
Why people feel betrayed is the government that is supposed to be working with us is betraying us for the foreigner. And if you look at history of tyranny, if we go back to the Greek scholars, I can't remember which one I said, but he basically said the tyrant prefers the foreigner because they're easier to use against their own people. And so a lot of us see that.
But then you look at, the First Nation chiefs that ceded the land because they're getting a good deal out of it. And like you said, all these agreements, we've decided they did sell it. But the chiefs sold it, right? It wasn't the people necessarily. So if those chiefs are tyrants, then they're still selling their land to the foreigner, right?
Yeah.
I
think a lot of the deals in Canada were not good. I think, and it came from multiple different areas in Canada.
And I think anyone that has any modicum of power is going to abuse it in some way, right? Like it's always going to be abused. And I guess I'm just very like, I do like a certain degree of establishments, I believe. Like having road laws that are consistent is handy for being able to drive because everyone's on one side of the road or the other. But I'm not trustful of anyone that's establishing. And maybe at some point you just have to say, it's a leap of faith of like, maybe this person will do good enough and they'll move forward. But because it's the same lesson as a series of unfortunate events. Just because fire burns doesn't mean you should live without fire, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you could say the same of government or moral superiority.
See, it is never year zero and it is never the last year. Does that make sense?
I think so. Are you saying like things can always change. Like there's never a permanent tyranny, or there's never.
That's part of it. It is not the past that was. We are not our grandparents. It's not year zero.
I disagree with that, I think, but keep going.
And it is not the end of days. We will keep moving forward. And yeah, tyranny can add things and change. And I think this is just for Canada. We talked about it before. Your opinions might have changed now. I don't know, but I think that Canada, despite everything, needs to move forward in one way or another with the two classes of citizens, of First Nation citizen and Canadian citizen. Either all Canadians become
First Nation,
or we obliterate First Nation. I think it needs to move forward one way or another.
Well, not as a racial or ethnic heritage, but as a governmental body, yeah.
As a governmental body, yes.
Yeah, because obviously you can come from somewhere, right?
Yeah, no, you're allowed to come from somewhere.
Yeah, but why does that phrase bother me? We need to move on. What?
Is it the imposition of there is a need to do it and we can't have things the way they are? Or is it this whole thing of it's 2024 and you rile at its modern year?
That might be it. But it could be something along the lines of, first of all, I think that we are our ancestors, and that, the CIA was corrupt back then and they can be corrupt now, and tyrants were corrupt back then and they'll be corrupt now. And I also think the end of days is possible. Like the First Nations are a great example, that we don't even know what their civilization was, because we only have the tiny shattered remnants of them, including their history and their cultures and their buildings and everything. So I do think, the empire of the United States might be a fairly short-lived one in the grand history. We'll see. Because it could be that our culture in the next 50 years is gone, right? Like we could be a different nation altogether, and it could all end. That doesn't mean it will, but I do think it's possible. It's kind of you get hit by a car crossing the street, but if you look both ways, you probably won't, right? Like you can ward against things, obviously.
The statement of "it's not the end of days" actually means that the apocalypse can happen.
Because it's not there yet, right?
Yeah, it's not the end of days. What that means is things aren't going to stagnate and stay the way they are forever. Things aren't as they are. The world moves, but it also is not the end of history. That's the statement. This is not the end of history. There will be more history. And that history might be the end of the United States, but this is not its end.
I think maybe what bothers me about we need to move on is it's basically what... there's two parts. One is, like, you shouldn't retread old ground, right? Like, you're not going to get anywhere if you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah. So obviously it makes sense there. But if there's more to be said, there's more to be said. And also,
I am not going to have any ancestral guilt for what happened. And I don't want the guilt to be systemized into our government and culture.
Yeah. But if you punch someone every time you see them, and then they're like, hey, and you're like, hey, you need to move on, and then you punch them again, hey, you need to move on. Like, you can't just... They get to react, right? But they can move on with that reaction, right? They can say, all right, I'm just going to cut your head off next time I see you and stuff. Yeah. But they're still moving on. They're like, I'm past this, right? But I don't think it should be buried and forgotten about, right?
No, I don't agree with burying and forgetting it, but I also...
And it's also in Canada, well, it's not our ancestors, but it's... I just had this heartbreaking thing the other day. I was dealing with a guy who had been through residential schools, and he was just this guy on the street. He was blind and deaf, and he's like, hey, can you help me find the welfare office, basically? And so I walked him around town until we found it. He went in there, and he said his name to the people, and they're like, no, your name's not in here. It's like, oh, I thought I'd bring him to the welfare office, right?
Yeah.
This dude, he's not a homeless dude begging, right? He's like, all right, I went to my lawyer. This is what I got to do, but I can't see and I can't hear, so I'm going to just go up to the first person I see and be like, hey, can you help me get here?
Yeah.
I'm going to turn my life around, right? We go into the welfare office, and I think, okay, cool. He's in the system. They got him, right? My job's done. I did my good deed. And they're like, yeah, no, your name's not in this list. And it's like, okay, so are you going to then phone his lawyer, or are you going to talk to the people that know what to do? And they're like, yeah, okay, no, your name's not in here. They didn't say anything, right?
Yeah.
And so he's just like, well, no, my name's this, and this is my lawyer. And he can't speak properly because he's blind and he's deaf, right? So he's has a slur, and it's hard, but he's trying. They're just doing nothing. And then one of the guys behind the till, this Indian dude, is like, hey, do you have status? Right? Like, and the guy's this First Nation guy that went through the car cross school, so he's his views there and everything, and he's just like, No, I'm a white man. What do you think? Like he got really offended, right? Like, hey, you some native dude? Like, what are you doing welfare? Obviously, some native dude. That's how he interpreted it, right?
Yeah.
And the Indian dude just like, well, I don't know what to do here. And it's like, why aren't these welfare people taught tact a little bit? Like, maybe it's his first day and he's having a bad day. Like, it happens, right? But so native guy gets really upset, and then another one of the people waiting for welfare, right? Like this, this guy this dreg of society that's so worthless he can't make any money, and he's waiting for welfare. Let's say that's not how I view him at all, but that's kind of I don't know if he's a homeless person, but he's a person that he obviously doesn't have a job because he's getting welfare, right?
Yeah.
So society has deemed him not worthy of having a job for some reason, right? He goes up to the deaf-blind guy, who you can hear a little bit and see a little bit, right? Yeah. But he's not fully deaf or fully blind. Grabs his hand, both his hands, and he says, like very loud and clearly so he can understand him, he says, Sir, the man was asking if you have status because you can go to a specific building and they will give you money based on status. And I want you to understand this has nothing to do with your race other than there is a system for that, and he's just asking if we can get you the money that way. And do you understand, sir? And the guy's like, oh, okay, yeah. And he's like, and I am heading to a building next to that after I get my check, and I can take you there if you want. Shall I go with you? And he's like, oh, okay, yeah. So this probably homeless guy who's on welfare, because he carries around this big bag with all this stuff in it, right?
Yeah.
It's like the best social worker you've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's like, fire everyone in this building, give them your job. Because like they had people piling out, like trying to solve this problem by doing nothing. There was like 7 people in the office, all hiding behind their screen, so the dirty homeless people can't touch them or whatever. And they're looking to me like, you got to fix it. It's like, I'm a random guy he pulled off the street. Like, I'm just in here to help this guy. And I'm apparently our taxes go to this organization to help people out, and you do nothing but hide behind your screen. And then this random dude on welfare, just the most charismatic man you've ever seen, knows how to treat people like they're human and knows how to help them. Like, you're all fired, he gets your job, right? Like, it's like, it made me, I was crying when I left that building. Like I hugged the dude, I shook the hand of the other guy who said, I can take care of this, and left out of there. And I was just like trying to fight back tears as I went off walking, because it's like, this is how we help people. This guy, and who knows, maybe he still did, I don't know, but this guy that's like, I'm going to sort my life out, I'll go to this office, he might be dead on the street now because, no one was able to help him. I don't know what happened, but it's like, oh yeah, we have a welfare system that looks after everyone. Unless you're vulnerable and deaf and blind and don't have anyone that can help you. So isn't that the person that needs help the most? Yeah. And the only person that knows what to do is some other guy on the system that we've deemed not worthy. Yeah. And then I hear the NDP, it's like, oh, the party that's like, oh, the welfare party. And they're like, they're not saying on the news, let's solve the welfare. They're like, let's jail people for criticizing residential schools. Wow. Gee. Yeah, but that's why, it's not it's not distant past, let's move on, right? This is a dude alive now who's only in his 60s, who's...
Yeah, and help him.
Yeah.
But you didn't torture him.
No.
And that's what I don't want systems.
And you see the NDP is doing the exact opposite thing, right? They're like, oh yeah, well, we're going to jail people for criticizing the residential schools, instead of, you know what? We're going to go into that office, we're going to fire everyone in here, except for that dude Matthew, shout out to Matthew, who's an angel, or a serial killer looking for an easy victim, but I'm pretty sure he's an angel. And we're going to put people like Matthew in charge, right? We're going to put the people who actually can do something in charge. Yeah, and that's how you move on. You move forward. Move forward, yeah. Let's move forward, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I want to move forward.
And I do think it is growing pains in a way, right? Like, well, maybe. I was going to say, you look at like countries where they have these ancient racial divides, but then you look at like Israel, and it can last. But
or the Houthis and the Tutsis.
Yeah, but I hope it can move on, because because the First Nations that are my age never went to residential school, right? Yeah, they're not others; they're my friends. Yeah, it's like, and I was at a friend's the other day, and he's a guy, he lives in Alberta, but he was saying, with this Truth and Reconciliation Day, his work, they got, and I'm not going to give any more details about this guy because of this, but his work was saying, we're still working on the Truth and Reconciliation Day, but just don't tell anyone that don't talk to any of our First Nation customers on that day, just so they think we're not working. But the funny thing is, my friend is First Nation. Yeah. So, but they don't see it, right? They're just like, oh yeah, we're just not going to, because everyone under about 60 is now we're all Canadians together, right?
Yeah.
Like anyone that's under 60 and lived here since they were a baby, they're all Canadians, and we all have the same values. We all like, and maybe they do a sweat lodge or something but I've done sweat lodges. Like I've done the traditional stuff, and some of them haven't. And there's different cultures, of course, and different histories and different places you came from. But I hope in the next like 2 or 3 generations, like you said, move on, I guess. Yeah. Or move forward, whatever it might.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can go with move forward.
Yeah. I don't know why move. I think it might just be, like you said, the current year thing.
Yeah.
It might just be that. I'm not sure what it is. But, yeah, I've got to get to work, so
yeah,
we'll wrap it there, I guess.
Yeah.